Okay, today I'm going to go ahead and call our BOCC special meeting to order at 9:07 a.m. If we can all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Brandy, if I can get a roll call, please.
Commissioner Reynolds. Commissioner Chaparro.
Present by video.
Commissioner Sanchez. Vice Chair Murillo.
Present by video as well.
Chair Shalja Hernandez.
Present. Thank you. We do have quorum. Okay, the commission convenes as the Board of County Commissioners and the County Board of Finance in open session. First up is our FY25 budget review of department requests and discuss or take action as deemed appropriate. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, I'll second. So I have a motion by Commissioner Chapato and a second by myself. Ms. Ozma, welcome. Thank you for meeting with us today.
Good morning, Commissioners. So today we would be discussing the FY25 budget work session. On the agenda, the first item, the strategic budgeting and direction, was presented by Insight Consultancy on April 9th. So we would be presenting the other items today, which is our budget calendar. It would show the timeline for this process. We would also look at historical data and forecasting based on 10-year history. We would be discussing the FY25 budget request, countywide revenue, expenditures, and reserves. And then the departments would be doing presentations for their budget for FY25. So I will skip over the slides for Insight as these were previously presented. For our budget calendar, we are meeting today on April 15th to do our first budget work session. On our next BOCC meeting, April 23rd, some of the external agencies, including Transit District, Animal Services, and MRVDA, will present their requests for FY25. On May 14th, we'll come before the board to present our preliminary budget for FY25. If needed, we will bring it again before the board on May 28th for approval. And then 2 months later, on July 23rd, we would be bringing the final budget to the BOCC, as well as our fourth quarter report, which will be for entire fiscal year 24 until June 2024 for approval. And these would be due to DFA by July 31st. So this slide shows our total revenue and expenditure growth based on 10-year history. The blue line at the top shows our total revenues. Orange line below that shows our total expenditures. In gray, we have our GRT, which also includes equalization tax. The yellow line shows our property taxes. So after FY19, our revenues have been higher than our expenditures every year. So although in our budgets in the prior years, we have budgeted to dip into our reserves, but if we look at the actuals, the county, these expenditures are far less than their revenues. And based on 10-year history, we have projected for the next 5 years. This slide shows the general fund growth. Again, it's 5-year forecast based on 10-year history. At the top, the blue line shows the general fund revenues. The orange line shows the general fund expenditures, and the gray line at the bottom shows the general fund transfers. So we have been doing transfer out to other departments to support operations and for capital purchases and projects. These funds are detention center, utilities, roads, and other capital projects, such as roads initiative. This is our cash reserve history. At the top, the orange line shows the total cash, which also includes restricted funds, such as grants, ARPA, fire excise tax, flood commission, indigent funds. The blue line shows our general fund cash, And as we can see, we are expected to end with 75 million in our general fund reserves, of which we are required to maintain 3/12 of a reserve, which is about 20 million. This is our county-wide revenues. So the first column with the figures represents the FY24 adopted budget, our current fiscal year's budget. The next column shows our FY25 request for next fiscal year. The third column has the difference between the two, and the last column represents it as a percentage. So for gross received tax, GRT, we are budgeting 5% over what we have received this year. The biggest difference is in equalization. We budgeted it at 4 million in FY24. We received 6 million, and in FY25, we are budgeting it at 6 million. Property taxes is based on formula used by DFA. For fees and service charge, there is an increase for detention center federal care of prisoner, about 2.7% higher for next year's budget. Miscellaneous, we see a drop, and the reason is that in FY25, we received LATCF, Local Assistance Tribal Consistency Fund from US Treasury, which was a one-time payment. We haven't budgeted anything in FY25. Other than that, for investment income, we have kept it the same as FY24 budget based on discussion with the treasurer. State distributions are for fire, EMS, and law enforcement protection fund. These would be adjusted to actuals, and grants are various carryover amounts, and these we would also adjust to actuals when we get close to the fiscal year end. The general fund revenues, again, the increase is in GRT, which includes equalization, because we are budgeting it at 6 million in FY25, as we received 6 million in FY24. So the budget for FY24 to 25, the difference is about 2 million. The grants in general fund is the BLM illegal dumping grant. So here, now we move on to expenditures for FY25. So we are doing 5% for unrepresentative. We have budgeted it. And for command staff, it would depend on the resolution. For healthcare estimate, we have budgeted 5.1% increase, which is about 663,000 for the year. Union step increases, we have put in a budget of 1.7 million. There is still pending fire and detention negotiations. For new position requests, we have put in 2.3 million. There is a slide where we will be going over the 40 new positions. So new positions and capital requests are included in the expenditure figures for FY25 that we are presenting today. So county-wide expenditures, personnel costs increase. We have put in 5% for unrepresentative step increases, the 5.1% for health, as well as new positions for 2.3 million. Operating costs is based on departmental requests. Debt service is for our GO bonds and NMED grants. Capital outlay, we would be discussing the capital requests for which are carry forward, as well as new requests in upcoming slides. State distributions are law enforcement protection, EMS, and fire. Grants always vary based on the grant award amount and remaining balances, and these would be adjusted at year-end to reflect actuals. This slide shows the FY25 expenditure for different departments, the breakdown. So the first column shows the FY24 adopted expenditure budget. The next column has our next fiscal year FY25's preliminary request. The third column shows the change, and the last column, the change as a percentage. So the biggest increase is in percentage-wise is in fire and assessor at 31%. External agencies increased by 18%. Then DASO and flood by 16%. Community development, waste exchange, and HHS indigent 13%. And then for some departments, there is no change or there is a decrease as well. The last one that we have is other non-departmental. Those are pass-through GRTs, emergency fund, built contracts, and local assistance tribal consistency fund. Moving on to county-wide operations. So again, we are comparing our current fiscal year FY24 adopted budget with our FY25 requests. So in public safety, which includes DASO for this presentation purposes, there is 10% increase. This includes restricted funds also. It does not include capital grants or state distributions. For elected officials, there is 6% increase. In administration, we see a decrease of 3%. That's because of LATCF, Local Assistance Tribal Consistency Fund. If we take that out, there would be an increase of 7%. Community services is a 9% increase, which is animal control, constituent services, community development, flood, and HHS. Public works, we see a 4% increase, which is facilities, fairgrounds, vector control, jetport, roads, utilities. Debt service, there is 1% change, and pass-through GRTs are at 18%. That includes Spaceport GRT and Anthony Water and Sanitation GRT. This slide shows our general fund expenditures. Personnel costs have increased by 14%. That includes new positions as well as step increases, overtime, callback, incentive pay. Operating costs shows a 9% increase. Capital outlay, there are several capitals in process in general fund. We would be going over them in detail in the next upcoming slides. And in grants, in general fund is the BLM illegal dumping grant. This slide shows the general fund operations comparing FY24 to FY25 budget requests. So public safety includes DASO, fire, and OEM, where there is a 19% increase. Elected officials are at 12%. That includes assessor, clerk, commissioners, probate, and treasurer. Administration, 7%. Community services, 5%, and public works, 7%. There will be departmental breakdown in future slides. So this slide shows the budget recap so we would be beginning our fiscal year 25 with an estimated cash balance of 199.77 million. We are budgeting revenues of 284 million, expenditures of 356 million, which would, if our revenues and expenditures are as per budgeted, the ending cash balance would be 127.9 million. We are required to maintain a reserve in our general fund by DFA, so that would be 26.66 million. Once we take that out, the adjusted ending cash balance is 101 million. The use of reserves is 71.79 million. So this is the use of reserves for capital and one-time expenditures. If we look at our recurring revenues and expenditures, we have a surplus of about 600,000, which we would be showing in the next slide. Again, we have been budgeting to use the use of reserves, but in actual scenarios, we have been adding to the reserves and our expenditures have been lower. So this slide shows the balance of our revenues and expenditures. So our budgeted revenues for the fiscal year is 284 million, expenditures are 356 million, and we would be dipping into our reserves for 71 million. Of that, if we take out the restricted funds for 37.36 million, restricted includes grants, fire, excise tax, flood commission, healthcare assistance fund, and also if we take out the local assistance, tribal consistency fund, crisis triage, potential retiree payout, and one-time items, and our capital items for 32 million, we have a budget surplus of 600,000. So our recurring revenues are 600,000 over the recurring expenditures. The one-time items in operations are for facilities. We have the condition assessment, master plan, space study, and also community development, county manager emergency fund, community development demolitions, and IT licenses, utilities, land acquisition, and OEM startup costs for CPR and first aid programs. So we had a request for 40 new positions for FY25, and we have listed them here along with the budgetary impact. So for community development, there are 2 positions, a secretary and laborer. For DASO, there are 14 deputy position. This is in addition to 5 recently classified from detention center, so the total would be 19. For fire, there are 15 positions, 12 of which are firefighters. Then we have lieutenant, battalion chief, and deputy chief fire marshal. For utilities, there is 1 position for operator 4. For flood, equipment operator. For commissioner request, we have budgeted an economist position. We are also in discussion with NMSU and City of Las Cruces to seek alternative options if these services can be contracted out. There is also request for executive assistants to be moved from temporary to fixed term. This would have no budget impact. And then the commissioner request for compliance officer for ethics complaint. So the total for the new positions is 2.27 million. These are the FY25 capital in process requests from unrestricted or general fund. These have been approved by BOCC in prior meetings. So the carryover amounts for DASO, there is the crime scene unit. For clerk's office, there is the absentee ballot sorter and warehouse. Detention has water control system and slider replacement phase 1. Stainless steel shower import inserts. OEM has the facility design. For utilities, we have the Colonias match and improvements for Salem and Rincon. For fleet, there is the EV charging stations and flatbed tow truck. And for roads, there is the roads initiative for 12 million. These were all the capital in process from unrestricted fund. Next, we have the new capital request for FY25 from unrestricted funds. So for DASO, 25 fleet replacement is 2.6 million. 10 additional fleets is 1.05 million. For detention center, there is phase 2 of the water control project and slider replacement. Then there is adult facility boiler replacement, kitchen equipment, rear parking, and juvenile day room floor refinishing. For detention, there is also break room remodel and new desk for control center. Engineering has projects related to grant. Facilities and parks has HVAC for district court and MRVDA server room. Rincon Park, Salem Park, Guadalupe Park, La Mesa Community Park, LED lighting for district court, public health, and government center, East Mesa and Butterfield Park. The subtotal as of now is 10 million. For facilities, there's also the scissor lift, fairground improvements. For IT, there is equipment for community centers and fairgrounds, programming software, and security cameras. OEM has forklift trailer, and utilities has electrical feed replacements. The other requests from unrestricted funds are for utilities, upgrades for alarm and surround areas. For fleet, county vehicle replacements of 690 and road equipment for 1.2 million. The grand total request for capital items from unrestricted funds is 13.36 million. Next, we have new requests from restricted funds. For detention, there is a detention center projects for 480,000. Community development, John Deere track loader for 118,000. Fire rescue, excise tax has different projects, equipment and vehicles for 6 million. And flood commission projects, equipment and vehicles for 5.56 million. The total request from restricted funds is 12.2 million for capital items. This slide shows the external agency funding level. So the first 3 items that we have, spay and neuter, food resiliency, and MOVIDA, they come out of PILT. The graph that we have has the transit district as the yellow line on top. The animal services center is the orange line. A general fund revenues is the blue line, and gray line shows MOVIDA. So as we can see, in the last 7 years, the general fund revenues have not increased as much as requests from external agencies. So these three external agencies would be presenting their requests at the next BOCC meeting to the Commission. So please let me know if you have any questions. After this, the departments would be coming and presenting their budget request for FY25.
Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Chapato.
So if we go back to the previous page where we have film Las Cruces, what was the change between this fiscal year and the year prior?
So Film Las Cruces was at 95,000. This year, we are still waiting on their request. Is that, yes. So some of the external agencies haven't sent us their request yet. So they were put in as a TBD that we would be announcing at a later date. From Downtown Las Cruces, we did hear back that it would be the same 50,000. From Film Las Cruces, we are still waiting on the request for FY25.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for both of you for presenting right now. So we'll move on to departments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Lucio Luttrell, Budget and Research Officer. So we will start the department presentations. They've followed a standard format where departments will present on their strategic measures, milestones, FY25 request highlights, and their budget requests. There is some difference between elected offices and departments, as a lot of the elected offices are still going through identifying what their measures and milestones are. So there will not be a slide related to those. And if they do have something in place, they will speak of what they have in process. So we will start off. If you need a copy of the agenda for which departments are good, or the order of departments, I could give that to you. But we will start with elected offices first.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Tessa Beta, and I'm serving as Undersheriff. I am pleased to be here today with our budget specialist, Crystal Baca, our financial analyst, Milton Duran, and our sheriff, who just stepped out. So thank you, Chair Saljo Hernandez, Vice Chair Murillo, Commissioners, and County Management. For our budget session presentation, we aim to outline the fiscal strategy and commitment that the Doña Sheriff's Office has for the upcoming year. At the heart of our mission is to serve with integrity and hold ourselves accountable to the highest standards of honesty and ethical conduct. Professionalism, as we are dedicated to excellence in service through education, mutual cooperation, and pride. And fairness, where we are all committed to impartial and equal treatment through courtesy, compassion, and respect. In aligning our fiscal budget, we are guided by the transformative principles of 21st century policing, our ongoing commitment to maintaining CALIA accreditation, and the strategic objectives outlined in the Doña County Strategic Plan. These pillars are not only reinforced our dedication to excellence in law enforcement, but also ensure that our resources are strategically allocated to meet the evolving needs of our community. As we walk you through our budgetary priorities, we invite you to see how these investments serve as a direct reflection of our unwavering commitment to fostering a safe, just, and engaged community in Doña County. Slide 2 has our FY25 request highlights, including supporting communication and consistency of procedures through the Sheriff's Office and community. We will have requests that work with improving grant services and supporting ongoing efforts for grant funding. As a reminder, last year, we were able to report out for FY23 we secured over $3.8 million in grant funding. We do have 14 deputy positions that we are requesting to support public safety needs in various areas and remain competitive through market rate salaries. We have continued replacement plan of aged and high mileage vehicles for public safety efforts. And we want to just bring up that the rising costs within the department can be attributed to a surge in demand alongside escalating expenses associated with maintaining and enhancing service quality amid evolving market conditions. As we know, the cost of items is going up and we are subject to those changes. We also have continued implementation and accessibility of body security cameras and their integration with information technology systems. And we do want to say an additional thank you again to the Commission for their approval of our Axon body camera systems. For our more detailed view, I'm going to turn the podium over to Milton Duran, our financial analyst.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chair Shaho Hernandez. My name is Milton Duran. I'm the financial analyst. I'll be concentrating on the fourth column, which is the increase in dollars. To begin with, in the law enforcement department, we have personnel costs of increase of $2.9 million. That includes the 14 new officers that are requesting. That amounts to about $1.1 million. So the balance of $1.8 million is the carry forward increase in the existing personnel. That includes the contracted obligations and the step increases. The next item on equipment, Axon, again, it's the body cameras that you approved last fall. Additional equipment under 5, $138,000. That includes tasers that we're going to be acquiring and replacement of firearms as well. In the case of fuel is monitored by us closely with the global issues and the wars currently in process. We monitor that, and there's already some movement and concern that fuel may increase in the future. If you noticed last month, the fuel costs increased about 5%. You probably saw it on your when you filled up your tanks. Vehicle maintenance, we try to keep it at the current level. We're using some of our retired vehicles, using parts to replace some of the needs on repairs on those items. Contractual services, we have $114,000. That's going to increase with the ad contracts and the healing contracts that we have outstanding. Ammunition during the COVID was a big issue. There was chain supply issues, not only because of the wars, but because of increased law enforcement nationally. Supplies were doubted and extended, so we're monitoring that as well. But this year, we plan no increase in it. Data processing systems, that's basically IT charge for the department. Subscriptions, we have $117,000 increase. That includes some tools that we use in CID. It also includes our flock cameras and other performance IT users use for tracking activity. In the leases, we have a small increase of $31,000, and that's basically an increase in the contract with TEF Books, which is our vehicle computers, and also an increase in the enchantment contract, which is a maintenance item. All other operating expenses, we added a small decrease. So overall, we have 4.1 increase, of which 800,000 was approved last year. So we have really 2.3, which is an actual restated 10% increase. The next page is the sheriff's support off summary. In the case of personnel, we have an increase of 6%. Leases, we show a decrease. Contractual services, we have an increase of 40,000. That includes insight and some temporary salaries that we would like to have. Professional services, we reclassified that as a professional outside contract. That's basically my salary. The record storage project, that's an effort to try and purge our hard copies. It's an ongoing project by volunteers and some of the staff. We're trying to reduce the amount of paper that is still in storage. As we purge those, we're trying to be careful that we don't delete any items that may be needed for court. Court supplies, we held it at no increase. Travel, if you've traveled at all, you've seen that inflation is consistent and persistent. And we see increase of travel there of $6,000. In telephone, we show a decrease. That's just an allocation. Most of our telephone costs are in the law enforcement side. And all other expenses, we have a net of 30,000, which is a net increase of 9. In total operations, we have 328,000, which is an increase of 6%. In capital acquisitions, we have one item that's a carryover of our crime scene unit. That's 617,000 carryover. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Duran, I'm looking here, and as I go through the personnel costs, what all is I guess if we go up on the law enforcement side, what all is encompassed in that additional 2.9 million in the budget? And I'm wondering because I'm wanting to understand. There's going to be, I'm trying to figure out, because if we were to look at the increase in law enforcement officers, there's going to be other ancillary costs that are going to come along with it. You're going to need vehicles. You're going to need, when I look here at vehicle maintenance, things like that, some of these really haven't increased. And I would have expected, unless you're including it within the personnel cost, I would anticipate that unless it's going to fall under fleet or other departments, I'm wondering what is in that number there?
The number includes the 14 new cadets or new deputies that we are going to request. The balance of that is step increases and contractual obligations. The reference to the cars replacement, that's in the fleet side of the budget. You'll be hearing that request on the fleet. As far as equipment is concerned for new officers, that's in our overhead. That's in equipment, and it's also in ammunition, and it's also in supplies and uniforms, which we contemplate the increases and are included in the budget. So yes, we have accounted for it.
Okay, so just looking like, say, at ammunition, because that is flat, you're assuming that the levels or the existing budget you have will accommodate those additional?
We've been able to monitor the use of ammunition, so while we do have an increase, we also have continued monitoring of the use of those munitions. Costs have come down a little bit from prior years, but again, it's all predicated on national needs. So we don't anticipate an increase in ammunition. Okay. In terms of vehicles, the vehicle is in fleet, but the maintenance is in our budget. So again, we're using retired vehicles to repair some of our vehicles. The average now of mileage has been extended to 140,000. Used to be 120, used to be 110. So we're using the vehicles longer and replacing them or repairing them quicker with retired vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
So all of the effects of those increases are in our budget in one form or another.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Chaparro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to go back to the first slide where under contracts, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me what that includes? The contracts
Yes.
where you have contractual services for 310 and then it's increased to 424. Can you tell me what kind of contractual services that includes?
That includes our information discovery services. This is our background investigator. That's about 60,000. We have NMCO Media advertising services. of 43,000. Adams radio, about 64,000. We have psychological testing. We have a plan of 64,000. It has not been approved yet, but it is pending. And then the art of healing therapy, 169, and those are both consistent with what we've experienced during the past year. So we did increase a little bit on the information discovery and in the investigative services.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question on that. On the art of healing, what was the increase from last year to this year, and how many persons are involved with the art of healing? Is it one? Are we paying for lease? What are we paying for out of that?
There is predominantly one principal in that account, and it's consistent, the 169 is consistent with the prior year.
And the office is located where, please?
Good morning, Sheriff.
This is the sheriff speaking. The contractor maintains her own office at Loman and Campo, I believe.
Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate that. And I think that's all the questions I have. Mr. Chair, if you just give me a couple of minutes.
Okay, any other questions from any commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I think those are all the questions I have for now.
All right,
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
I would like to make one final comment.
Of course.
The process of budgeting has greatly improved. I've been here several years. This year, it was very transparent. It was very constructive. There was great dialogue with the budget, and I compliment the budget staff that you have.
Wonderful. Thank you. Beautiful. Thanks. Next up.
Good morning, Chair Sheldon Hernandez and
Good morning.
commissioners.
I like your shirt.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Ours should be pretty quick. I'll get through this in just probably a few minutes. The biggest item that we wanted to highlight is the absentee sorter from Blue Crest. And it has been expedited, and it's going to be a carryover from this year. And that's because it's not going to be delivered until August or September. And so because of our procurement process, things like that. So we'll see that in next year's budget. Okay, so here are some items. You'll really see the only change here is really in personnel costs, and you'll see a 3% increase, and that's going to be because of health insurance increases, pay increase for all staff, and then also any fluctuations with staffing that I know our budgeting office accounts for. And with that, do you have any questions for me?
Commission, any questions?
No questions.
Continue on. Thank you.
All righty, that's all I have for you all. Okay.
Oh, that was it? Okay.
Look, the next slide's not me, just so you see.
My goodness. Okay. Moving on to the assessor's office.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The assessor could not be here this morning, so you're going to have to bear with me. I'm Tanja Hazen, the acting chief appraiser. The 25 request highlights are to increase knowledge for all assessor employees via IAAO certifications in order to, and other trainings via Senate Bill 324, Doña County Resolution Number 2438. Maximize revenue generated by ensuring proper assessment, reappraisal, while maintaining the highest degree of accuracy, efficiency, and customer service. Ensure the values are correctly placed on the tax roll so no one individual or entity pays excess or insignificant taxes. Implementing and going green with the notice of values and official request, and for our office to take advantage of the current data systems technologies by improving productivity in the method to use to gather, process, and analyze data to its fullest. RFI refines the process and structure of the office, increasing productivity and efficiency. Professional development for office administration and staff. The assessor's office budget request. The 1%, do I need to change this? Okay, so the request for the 1% fund, the 2024 budget, the total revenues was $1,504,500. The 25 request is $1,645,267. The increase would be $140,767 for a change of 9%. The 1% fund expenditures for 2024, and I'm just going to go down to the total bottom line, was $1,972,412. For the 25 requests, $1,555,822, with a decrease of $416,589. So a change of 21% less. So the shifting of 7 positions from the 1% assessor, shifting 7 positions from 1% assessor restricted fund to general fund due to the lack of cash in the 1% fund. General fund expenditures for 2024 was $2,518,846. The request for 25 is $3,310,000, and the decrease would be $791,158 for a change of 31%.
Wonderful. Commissioners, any questions? I'm seeing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Treasurer's Office. Welcome.
I'm not going to be as fast as the clerk's office. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Eric Rodriguez, County Treasurer. Do I control the slides here? So for County Treasurer's mission statement, goals, objectives, we don't have them on here, and they weren't included in the slides. But we do have an internal strategic plan for the office. So I do want to briefly go over that, and that'll kind of put all the pieces together as what our budget, how our budget is defined. Our mission is to safeguard taxpayer money through effective collections, secure distributions, sound investment, and excellent customer service. Our goals are to provide excellent customer service, provide accurate financial reporting, ensure equitable tax collection and distributions, maintain the safety, liquidity, and return of county investments, and finally, maintain safekeeping of public records. Last year, every year, our office meets to update our strategic plan and identify initiatives for the office. And last year's initiatives that we identified for our fiscal period of 23-24 was community outreach, expanding on our convenience payment locations, which, as a matter of fact, our chief deputy is out there right now working on the convenience payment locations. We continue to expand on e-billing services. This will significantly lower the county's costs of printing and mailing, which make up a significant portion of our budget. We focused on improving workflows, implementing investment software system, and finally, we continue to work on mobile home collections, which we have about $2 million outstanding mobile home collections out there that we could bring in additional revenue for the county. So with that being said, Overall, our operating budget increased $16,000 from last year to this year. Postage stayed the same, even though there is talks that there might be increases in postages, but at least it will not affect us in this next fiscal period. Printing and publishing, that did increase, and that was primarily an increase from the printer, whose paper costs have just generally gone up in general. Contractual services, our armored delivery services stayed about the same. Our investment software is what we added to our budget last year, and that comes with a price tag of about $20,000. But what it does is it improves our budget, our portfolio management process. It makes our decision-making much faster, much easier, more effective, and therefore it's capturing more revenue for the county. Investment in staff development continues to be the same. And there was a slight increase in other operating accounts to ensure continuity of services, but those are to be expected year over year. And so here's what it looks like, a percentage change total of about 6% increase. Mr. Chair, members of the board, that is all I have for you.
Thank you. Not quite as fast as the clerks, but you're
I
right on
tried.
point.
I
We'll
start
take it
talking
today.
and you can't shut me up. But if you have no questions, that's all I have.
Commissioners, any questions for our treasurer?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. And this is, I think, in terms of the scale of things, I think it probably doesn't matter. Oh, I won't say it doesn't matter, but not a huge issue. But I think I'm wondering if, you kind of talked about the postage, and I know we saw it on the assessor's increase as well. But I think, I don't think, do you anticipate that significantly increasing or with those notices?
I wouldn't
or
say
is there a way?
significant as we try to move to, and every day we get more people signing up for e-billing. So I think it'll balance out eventually. But yeah, we're just trying to push that e-billing for everybody, and hopefully people will just start catching on. But a lot of people just like to look at their paper bill on hand, so. Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask, because I think that's where I was going to go with it, because I think I was wondering if there's a way we might be able to start trying to push more and more to be able to get to those that are able to use the e-statements and the notifications, so that then we don't even have to do that. I'm a proponent of it only because when mail comes in, I think so often now there's so much junk mail and things get lost in there. But if I have it in my email or I have certain things flagged, I know right away, boom, I can find it, and it's in a repository. It's easy to be found.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sanchez, I think there is certainly an opportunity for us to be more aggressive on a campaign to get e-billing set up. So that's certainly something that we want to consider as our initiatives for 24-25. So yeah, absolutely.
And I think also, just as an ancillary benefit for us on the commission side, if we had more emails in the database, we might be able to help communicate other things that we may have going on with the county. So
That's the struggle. That's the hard part, is getting those emails. So.
Absolutely. So thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Moving on, we do have our probate judges department.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lucio Luttrell, Budget and Research Officer. Judge Baca cannot be in attendance today, so I will present on her behalf. And so I might give the clerk's office a run for their money on the amount of time it takes to get this one done. So the request is pretty straightforward. The initiative this year is to try and fill the administrative assistant part-time position approved by the board in FY24's budget. It's taking some time. I understand that Judge is in the works on doing that. Overall, the probate is requesting a flat operating budget, and the largest line item they have is contractual services, which is for the conversion of digitized probate cases. So as you can see, overall increase of $116. The budget is relatively small. I think it's the second smallest. I think Ernest is still in the running for that one with the smallest department budget. But with that being said, are there any questions?
Commissioners, any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have detention center next. Welcome, Director Baker.
Good morning, Director Baker from the Detention Center. For our strategic measures and milestones, we're looking at trying to get a 6-week process for recruitment to hire date. We'll be looking at increasing our hourly rate to come more in line with the market rate for the area. Hopefully that'll result in a reduction in overtime in comparison to the personnel budget, because a lot of our budget is eaten up in overtime right now. Decrease in vacancy rates at the sergeant level. We've recently filled a number of them, and so our vacancy rate has dropped significantly. We're looking to hopefully, with some of the repairs and everything and maintenance that we've been doing, have a reduction in the amount of emergency repairs that we experience, and integrate the detention center into the county's facilities management plan, so that way we don't have recurring issues with things being deferred too long and then having emergency repairs. Some of our request highlights, our capital was covered before, continued working on the water control system replacement, cell door locks, keys, slider door replacements. It's the second phase of that. Boiler replacement and kitchen equipment replacement. We redid the kitchen, but a lot of the equipment was existing, so now we're going to be upgrading that. Some of our key operating cost increases are tactical bunker gear, because we have our vests that we're nearing the end of service, because they're good for about 5 years. And we're gonna have to start replacing those. Contractual services are a big ticket item. It's gonna be for our new medical services contract. From what we can kind of get an idea of, medical treatment has gone up in the cost, so we're gonna be bearing the cost of that with the new RFP that has been put out. Printing and publishing, we're going to be putting out more recruitment materials, so that's gone up a little bit. Record storage maintenance, like a lot of us, we have a huge amount of stuff in storage that is well beyond the years that we have to keep in reserve. So we're going to start eliminating that, because that way it decreases the annual costs going forward. And then we're going to be replacing some of our tasers. One of our bigger things is for revenue. Our care prisoners for federal is going to be going up 2.5 million. And we're expecting a small increase for all the other care prisoners that we receive from other agencies. Relatively modest increase in our operating costs of 2% for the year. A little bit of it's in personnel costs, just with step increases and filling positions. Facility maintenance, just because it's an older facility and we have to keep maintaining it, it's gone up a little bit, but not a huge amount. And most of our other operating costs we've looked at and determined that we could decrease it slightly because of price decreases after COVID's kind of waned. Some of the food costs and everything else like that have gone down. Let's see, for juvenile, it's one of our sub-budgets basically. Of course, their personnel goes up along with the adult facility, and we're looking at increasing their janitorial supplies over there right now. It's bare minimum, so we're trying to get it to where it's able to be maintained at a cleaner state. And those two come up to a 3% increase. And the medical section expenditures, the big one there is, of course, the medical services contract, and that's basically offset a little bit by the personnel costs that we're able to decrease. So with that, that's not overly exciting, but do you have any questions?
Commissioners, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Not seeing any. Thank you, Director Baker.
All right, thank you very much.
That was easy, wasn't it?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, no, I like it. How about that? Welcome.
Good
Jamie Michael.
morning. Jamie Michael, County's Health and Human Services Director.
Good morning.
Good morning. So what you see here are the measures and milestones associated with our strategic plan for next fiscal year, actually the next 5 fiscal years. We are focused on the vital conditions related to basic needs for health and safety, addiction treatment, and acute care for illness and injury. So the measures that you have there are related to some of our key programs that address those measures or will result in hopefully positive indicators related to those measures. So you can see that we are focused on the dashboard for our Doña Connect program, which is the program that will help connect people to services, healthcare, social services, any type of service they may need. And we're looking at creating a dashboard and the indicators so we can come back and report the progress of that program. Then there's a group of indicators related to activities and people that we serve at the community centers. We also have activity measures related to the youth substance use prevention program that we have in the schools, our diabetes education, prevention, and management program, the court compliance program where we monitor people who've been convicted of alcohol-related misdemeanor crimes, and then also the completion of a plan for the opioid settlement funds. A lot of the work that we do is also related to overdose prevention, so looking at just counting the number of people trained, number of kits distributed. Again, we're going to count referrals made in the Doña Connect program, how many times we're able to connect people to services for basic needs, and again, be able to tell you, is it for dental, for primary care, for housing, for transportation, what types of services are we connecting people to? Some of our budget highlights for the next fiscal year include expanding the activities for young people at the community resource centers. So we're anticipating 4 new contracts that will continue through next fiscal year that will provide, the contractors will provide activities specifically for young people at 6 different community resource centers. We are going to pilot a mobile community service van that will allow us to go to places where we don't have a physical building. It will add some convenience for our staff when they are out for several hours at a time, and then just a central place for people to gather and connect to resources out in different communities. Also going to continue to support and expand Connect Doña. We're looking at upgrading some of the broadband accessibility and reliability. I think reliability is important there of the at some of the community centers for our staff and the public, so it's easier for them to connect and use broadband services in those buildings. We also are going to add cancer care as a service available under the Healthcare Assistance Program. We're currently working on that contract with Memorial Medical Center. Again, we want to maintain the expansion of outpatient behavioral health services. We did find that with the HCAP program, it was kind of limiting because it was difficult for people to always have all of their paperwork ready, especially if they're experiencing a behavioral health crisis. So in addition to the HCAP, the Healthcare Assistance Program, we're also going to add some funding through the Health Fund. So we don't have some of the same qualifying restrictions. And then the implementation of the new supportive emergency housing program. So our first primary fund is the Health Fund. And you can see there our adopted budget for revenue and our request, and we're looking at an increase in that revenue of 3%. The expenditures, we're looking at a 6% increase, and you can see that we are looking at budgeting an expenditure less than the revenue for that account. And the biggest increase is in contractual services, and again, that's related to the youth activities, the contracts for the youth activities, and a reduction in leases. That's primarily because we over budgeted the amount for the lease of the van or the mobile community center last year. So we have a quote and we have more actual expenses related to that this year. The other primary fund, let me go back up here. If you see at the bottom, there's a little footnote. We also have grants and the local DWI fund, and that's going to stay at approximately 4.3 million in, 4.3 million out. And then there's also the Crisis Triage Center fund, and we're at this point budgeting the exact same amount that we did last year. I'm just a few days away from receiving the final proposed budget from Peak, so we'll have more conversations on that to come. And this is the healthcare assistance, formerly known as the Indigent Fund. And again, you can see the revenue increase about 3%, And on this one, if you compare the budgeted revenue with the budgeted expenditures, you can see that we're budgeting to spend more than we're bringing in, but we do have cash reserve to cover that. And primarily driving that is the increase in cost for ambulance services. So that's the largest increase there. There's also a decrease in personnel costs, and we're kind of maintaining the same number of employees. We just had a temporary assignment in that position over the last fiscal year and some other finance reasons that Lucio can address. So that is the summary of our budget.
Wonderful, thank you. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Sanchez.
Ms. Michael, I know you highlighted the 980,000 slated for the CTC operations. I'm just wondering if there was any type of estimates or if anything was included for potential changes to the CTC in regards to the potential, or what we're anticipating the changes to the involuntary admissions there. And I know there was some discussion about possibly having to change the intake area, but just wasn't sure if we have any estimates on that right now.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sanchez, I don't have any concrete estimates on the fencing and other things we need to the physical space, but we're going to try to get as much of that done this fiscal year as we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Of course. Commissioners, any other questions?
No questions, thank you.
No questions. Thank you, Ms. Michael.
All right, thank you all.
Welcome, Chief Jerry.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Did I not hit the down arrow? I thought I did. Okay. So my turn up here today. So along the same lines as the other departments have been discussing, is our strategic plans and milestones that we worked on with our new plan that's been adopted. Some of this language will be familiar to you. It's stuff that we've used in grants in the past. The SAFER grant, for instance, of talking about our ratio of 1 firefighter every 1,000 residents. Some of this language is straight out of the strategic plan as well, talking about the number of percent of stations calls that are being answered by the primary district. That's a key factor in establishing quick response times, but for both fire and EMS emergencies within those areas. Some other areas of our strategic plan that we've been discussing that is vital to the community is the fire prevention program. Not only does the fire department respond to 911 calls for fire and emergency services, we also are a key player in code enforcement as well as new infrastructure being developed within the county. And then in order to do that, we wanted to establish some measures that would help us develop a plan for the future and how to do that. And we work closely with Insight and Community Services to kind of align in that standard. So some key highlights that we have supporting those goals this year is the fire marshal position. It's a position that hasn't been existed in Doña County for some time, especially since the consolidation of the department back in 2019. This position is an executive level position that will interface both strategically with community members as well as business development and work with code enforcement to everything from water supply, which we know is a big concern in our region, to establishing future goals in our code policies. The next position is a battalion chief of EMS. As we're expanding our role, as I'll talk about here with the next position we're requesting in EMS, as we're expanding our role into larger EMS services, one of the key factors that actually comes into play is quality improvement, quality control. And at this point, with the number of personnel we have and the call volume that we're experiencing in EMS and supporting AMR, this position becomes key in ensuring that we're providing the best quality services that we can. The other position that's being requested is the lieutenant training specialist. This is with the staff numbers that we have now, which is approaching 100, having 3 personnel that are
dedicated to training to meet the standards both in fire and EMS, which are extensive. Licensing for EMTs every 2 years is mandatory to keep those licenses. And then fire to to maximize our ISO credit is heavy as well. Just as an example, an entry-level firefighter for maximum ISO credit is 140 hours of training a year. So in order to manage that on the career personnel and the volunteer personnel, which do count towards our ISO, those training positions become key. The 12 firefighter positions that we're requesting, they are firefighters, they are EMTs, but they are specifically to support our role in the new ambulance services contract, which is defined as the primary backup for AMR in all 3 zones, in the north, the central, and the south. So this would put dedicated firefighters, and I do say we're not doing single role EMTs on those trucks because of the advantages firefighters bring us. Our rescues, our patient transport rescues, do contain firefighting equipment and heavy rescue equipment like jaws of life, the breathing apparatus. So these firefighters, EMTs, do perform dual roles for the community, which is an incredible value when we start looking at overall response numbers, which is another key factor for ISO. Those are the position requests. The capital requests all come out of fire tax, which is, so it's our standard fleet replacement, fire station renovations, extractors, which is our ongoing effort for carcinogen control, and then communications equipment, which is always an ongoing build out. I do have a little plug here, and I thank you for the support for the 700 program that we've been developing. I have been having a chance to demo it for different individuals recently, and the response is always outstanding on what's happening there on the 700 transition for New Mexico Do It. We do not have any capital requests from the general fund. So the budget requests that we do have, so personnel costs, there is an increase of 31%. So part of that from the adopted FY24 budget is the SAFER grant as well. So not only are we adding the 15 positions that I just described, there also is the increase of the 24 SAFER positions. So some of that is grant funded. Along with those increases, we have increases in areas that you would expect. Uniforms, medical screening, the educational assistance program, training. We actually, with some of the training that's been increasing in New Mexico and our increased training capability, we decreased that this year. The other operating expenses in this category fall under printing and publishing for our recruitment, and then the testing services that we use to onboard people have gotten more expensive. That includes iDetect, that includes our written exams, that kind of thing. So in the fire excise tax, our request this year, it falls in line with previous years. So in vehicle maintenance, this is where we're choosing to refurb fire trucks instead of buy new. Those refurbished fire trucks are coming back with an expected 15 to 20 year extended life of service. We're doing everything bumper to bumper. We're replacing bushings and suspension, new pump housings, like new light systems, safety systems are being installed. But that's at a significant savings of over a new one at an increased turnaround time to get them back into our fleet. And last year, or this current year in FY24 was the first time that we had ever done that. We have a better handle on that cost and process now, so to do 2 of them this in FY25 is gonna run us about $800,000. Building maintenance, which is our facilities across the 19 facilities across the county, we're not increasing. Equipment under 5K, there's no increase. Bunker gear, again, because of an increase in staff, we're increasing in that category. The other operating expenses here is increases in costs from our medical director, our pharmacy that we have on board, and some other miscellaneous costs, but those are the 2 big. The reason that you see the decrease in this budget is the carryover of the completion of Station 5 from FY23 to 24 really drove up our capital costs this year. But with that project concluding, that's why you're seeing the decrease in this year's capital request. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
thank you. Good morning, Chief. How are you?
Good morning.
Chief, regarding your Deputy Chief Fire Marshal, I know you've included it in some costs, but how much is that position? What are you thinking of the salary for that position?
Did you include that in? So that the deputy chief position actually has a pay scale that is published for it, and it looks like, oh, it's right here, Lucy. The fire marshal is based on a 95,502. Now, does that include salary and benefits? For 9 months.
And did you say that includes salary and benefits?
Yes, for 9 months.
Okay, for 9 months. All right, and then there was another one. If you go to the first page, please, if you could scroll to the first page, where you're asking for your positions, Chief.
Oh, it's in the FY25.
Yes, yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, and so on the battalion chief EMS, what is the pay scale for that?
That one for the 9 months is 85,784.
Right, thank you. All right, those are the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
None,
Commissioner.
thank you. Moving on, we have Flood Commission. Welcome, John.
Good morning, Chair
Good morning.
Joe Hernandez and Commissioners. Sorry, I got a little frog in my throat this morning. So real quickly, the way that we set this up is that if you want to think about the way that we're planning for our budget for the next couple of years, is that a lot of our systems kind of hide within the county infrastructure, and the main one being our flood warning system. So what we're talking about here is basically upgrading that system. We've included a budget item for taking all the data that we're gathering through the flood warning system and make it into a much more easily digestible format. And so it's going to take us a little while to do. We've actually set up about a $50,000 budget to do just that. All the information is there, and it's all public data. And so with us monitoring over 70 weather stations currently, and more to come this next fiscal year, it just makes better sense to be able to use it. And so that's what we're talking about here. The flood navigator position is basically internal to that, making sure that we can put that information out to the public and also work on our master drainage plans, continue pushing those out to the public as well. And so this is all based on percent completion for our projects. So if you know, we have multiple capital projects, and so some of our milestones are going to be based purely on percent complete. So we're requesting one more position for an equipment operator. In the past, all of our maintenance on our structures was done by contractors externally, and we have started internally doing some of the maintenance now, because as we build more of these structures, obviously the cost is going to increase as I think we have 4 construction projects going at a current time, and so just having another maintenance operator will help us. So the capital requests, and again, none of these are from the general fund. This is all from Flood Commission funds and grants. So basically, these are matching funds, and the way that they'll be doled out is basically as the projects are completed. So one of the things that becomes very obvious is if you look at the Dragonfly Channel, those are phases 3, 4, and 5. We probably won't start Phase 5 this coming fiscal year, but we'll be very close to it. So we'll be at a point where we're starting to look at the contracting for it. So we're setting it aside in the budget as we get there. Phase 1 is currently underway, and Phase 2 will be budgeted, will be bid out in the coming months. So we'll be well on our way by the time this is ready to go. La Union, these projects are ready to start. The Mendez Street project starts probably around July. The La Union Street projects is under design currently, so construction will start towards the end of the calendar year. The Doña matching funds for Abeta Pond, that project is out to bid currently, so it will start sometime this summer. The flood warning system is basically, as I said, adding more weather stations, more components for that. The property purchases in Doña and La Union are both for projects that are in the design phase currently. The Doña one is for the Datil Pond area, which is directly across from the fire station. La Union project is for an additional ponding area that we're in negotiations with the landowner currently. Purchases for cameras for the flood warning system and server storage, those are both to continue getting better information out there. So our flood warning system is going to evolve to where we actually have live fed cameras into the system where we can see what's happening. Server storage is obviously the data that we gather between the flood warning system and our aerial photography is massive. And so we're setting aside some money to help with server storage as well. We have one aging vehicle that we're replacing as well. And as I say, all these come through our funds, not through Fleet's funds. Okay? One of our, and I already talked a little bit about this budget item, the $50,000 for website development. This is going to allow us basically to have a much more robust public-facing side of the flood warning system, including being able to handle the camera traffic. Essentially, we have personnel costs are increasing as we're adding one person plus the increase of the standard countywide for the unrepresentative amounts. Our professional services, this is a line item that changes every year based on the projects that we're working on. We're actually beginning to start doing some emergency action plans for the dams. And so this requires some additional modeling that we don't currently have in-house. Loan payments. These are for some of the Colonia's grants that we have. The loan amounts are actually a total of $59,950. So we'll pay those off this year. And then obviously, we have other operating expenses that are increasing, and these are mainly due to increases in costs for fuel and materials throughout. And with that, I stand for questions.
Wonderful, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? No? Thank you, Mr. Gwynn.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on, we have engineering and roads. Good morning, Mr. Moe.
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, Chair. Engineering and road strategic measures and milestone. And this is something that we have been really struggling with for a long time, is make sure that DIG 1 policy is implemented, and when we are notified in advance when somebody's cutting our roads, and also get a better relationship built with the utilities so we can, I guess, work at the same time on the roadside. We might have a project coming up do the paving at the same time as they were doing their work. We have increased the number of road we rehabilitating through the chip sealing. And one of our goals, we just started actually today, it's a SS4A program. We just had a kickoff meeting with our consultant to reduce the number of crashes on our roadway. And we're working with the sheriff's office. They're part of our team to look at all the crashes and study data collection and also look at the nature of these crashes and see where they're happening and age groups, time of the day, geometrical design of the roadway and reduce and also we are training a lot of our employees. We are having regular safety meeting all the time to reduce the number of crashes our own employees are involved in. And look at all these crashes and make sure our employees are trained into the hauling heavy loads on roadways. And we're also increasing the number of projects, and we are in a process of purchasing a software that keeps us better track of all the projects and make sure they're completed on time and also on the budget. And hopefully you all have a connection to this link that you can even, if your constituents ask for questions, you can check into it and see the projects. And the bridge condition, as we have been working for a long time with the New Mexico DOT. They do the bridge inspections every 2 years on every bridge. Unless the bridge is in a critical condition, then that happens every 6 months or every year. And we have been working with them to fix some of our bridges. And actually, 2 of them have the railings that have been damaged for 2 years. And we try to get a contractor to here, and the contractor is giving us right now an estimate to how to fix it. And also, NMDOT is proposing to help us with a couple of them to fix them. And also this year, we're starting to do another round of pavement evaluation. That tells us what the percentage of our lane miles, what kind of condition they're in, and pavement condition index, the PCI. Hopefully that goes higher this year. So we're starting actually this week. And you might see that van driving through your neighborhoods. And those are evaluating the pavements. And we are also tracking the projects designed in-house and out to the consultant to make sure that we're finishing them a little earlier and a little bit on a faster track. Other strategic measures, make sure the number of complaints have gone down, reduce also the time we spend on reviewing permits. And that's what really initial meeting with the developer, make sure everything has been discussed and they understand what the requirements are, and hopefully reduce the number of time this has to be reviewed and get the projects out on the road. And one of the things we're trying to do is provide a lot of training for our employees to help with the increased satisfaction. That's part of our strategic plan is we value our employees, and we providing relevant training so they can increase their productivity. And actually this week we are attending, hopefully you all can attend, commissioners. You are invited to attend the transportation conference at the Civic Center. So if you guys want to give a speech, I can put you on the agenda. So I'm part of the planning committee. So, and our budget, there is really no request for changes in personnel. And we have equipment. We are leasing equipment instead of purchasing it because some of these equipments are not used 24/7. and for the 12 months constantly. So it's a business decision. We have decided to go to the leasing some of these equipment. As you see, we have 3 loaders on there that would be about $128,000 a year. And those are almost $500,000 piece of equipment. And construction material, as you all know, is nationwide, is going crazy. I mean, it's going up. And we are experiencing the same thing in the state. This is our budget. And as you will see, I don't know how Lucio did it. He did his magic. He came out to 0 change, so that's a good thing. So, but as you will see, some of the material costs have gone up a little bit, and that's basically what we're trying to do. And since we don't have any vacancies and all the road department positions have been filled, we're increasing our work we do on the roadway. That's why we, as you see, the asphalt emulsions is $750,000. So, and we use all of it to improve our roadways. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I did have one question. Mr. Mobed, I just wondering, when we look at the difference between revenues and the expenditures, is that the expenditures being mainly driven by the projects that we have, mainly like the roads initiatives or things like that? I just wasn't sure if all of that was taken into account with this budget here, or if that was separate with the paving initiatives that we have, that we had anticipated would be coming out of the general funds.
The road initiative are not part of it, but we are. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what your question is.
So the costs that are coming out to be able to pave the roads that are part of our roads initiative that we recently approved, is that cost incorporated into this $8.4 million? Or is that a separate amount?
That's a separate amount.
Okay, will that be highlighted? I didn't see it in the list of slides, and so I was wanting to know exactly where that was.
I understand. I don't think this year we have that in there.
The roads initiative, yes, sir.
Right. No, it's not. It's not in there. No. What is it?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, so we included a line item on slide 26 for roads initiative for any carryover budgets to complete existing projects.
Okay. Thank you, Lucia. Thank you, Mo.
Any other questions, commissioners?
No question.
Okie dokie, moving on. Next, we have utilities.
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we are asking to push utilities and facilities and parks into a later time as our department director is not in yet.
Okay.
So if we could proceed with information
IT?
technology.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Kent English, Director of IT and Communications. So looking at our strategic measures and milestones, some of the things we're trying to accomplish in the next 5 years is furthering our digital transformation. And so this is helping out with our new ERP system, Workday. We also have some existing software systems that could be better utilized, and we'll address those with training and education to help the departments use that. Another area I think you're aware of is our community centers. Community centers are not well connected. A lot of those are remote. And there's just, even working with ISPs to try to get better connectivity out there has been cost prohibitive. So we're looking at some interim solutions. A lot of the community centers are on DSL. We still have about half of them on DSL, which is really old infrastructure, it's unreliable, and it's very slow speed. Even the new standards, the standards before were 25 meg download speeds, and just in March, they upped the standard to 100 meg download. And with the DSL, we get maybe 6 to 10, if it's reliable. And so that kind of rolls into the next milestone and measure is getting those community centers off of DSL. And so you'll see some capital budget that we've put in place to at least connect those for now with the microwave, which should give us over 100 meg connectivity and support the other initiatives like cameras and access and things that we need out of those centers. Response time for critical systems, we are in the process of implementing disaster recovery services, and that is going to help us with addressing the response time for our critical and not so critical systems to get those back up online and functional if we had an issue or an outage. Hardware integrations, our new ERP system is actually fueling some of this, where we're trying to integrate those in with the new Workday system. It also includes getting everything updated with security and single sign-on to strengthen our security posture, and also getting our telecom to voice over IP. And then the documentation protection. This is an initiative to classify our data, and once we get it classified, we can work on guidelines and policies that will help us with accessing the data, where we store it, and how it's protected, and then also our retention. Okay, for communications highlights, our contractual services. That's going to cover our monitoring contract for our radio sites. Professional services, since we've had a lot of turnover and it's been really difficult to keep that department fully staffed, we've had to lean more on vendors and professional services, so we see an increase in there to help us out during that transition, and we actually still have an open position there again now. Communications, this is with our troubleshooting and repair of our radio sites, and maintenance of that hardware, calibration of our microwave dishes, and then our generators and HVAC systems that support that. Our fuel for those stations, generator fuel, primarily for our East Patrios, which is primarily solar and does depend more on the generator. And then just getting more training, since we've had a lot of turnover, we have new radio technicians. They're not as experienced as the people we had before, and so we're having to invest in those resources to get them better trained. The capital hardware, I mentioned this earlier, this is going to help us get connectivity for those community centers and get them off of DSL. It's also going to provide some Wi-Fi and multi-point microwave connections to the network out of the fairgrounds. And we've been working with NMSU and partnering with them to get that better covered for all the events out there. And then in capital software, before we were actually, with part of our services, contract services, they were providing the software, and now we're changing vendors and we're actually purchasing the software, and it's actually lowering the cost overall. For IT services highlights, so the first two, the subscription costs and data system maintenance for this last fiscal budget. Those basically got split out. They used to all be in data system maintenance, and we tried to split out the subscription costs. The initial cut we took at that in identifying the software that was a subscription was not 100% accurate. So what you'll see is that we've rebalanced these two to better categorize the subscription costs. And the subscription software basically is our Workday and Microsoft, and those are the subscription software that we pay multiple year contracts is what really defines those. And then our data system maintenance, we have software licensing that's going to cover our banner and disaster recovery and our backups and our virtual and server environments. Equipment, so we've got our computer refresh, and that's going to, I think we're adding about another 300, replacing 300 desktops. We've got a 5-year plan that we work on our computer refresh, and those are usually only under warranty for 3 years, and so we bridge that other 2 years with just purchasing parts as needed. And professional services, that's our networking, and when we need DBA services, we've done a lot of data migration that's also related to the new ERP system, and it also covered cabling whenever we need new networking services. Contractual services, we've had some key resources that are, positions been vacant or key resources been out. And so bringing in consultants and temps, that's really helped us cover projects in those key roles, like in Banner and cybersecurity, and augmenting our staff for our techs. Our leases, that's our SAN storage or network storage. It covers our phone and our network equipment and also our copiers. Data equipment maintenance, that's going to be our hardware support, primarily for like Cisco and Dell and our new time clocks. And then communications, we are upgrading our internet service here at the Government Center to support all the additional connectivities that were coming in from the community centers, and also with our telecom. And then our new hardware equipment, our networking equipment, we have our network equipment refresh. Our lease is up, so we'll be signing a new lease to refresh our networking equipment. And then really, we hadn't really budgeted a lot for training in the past, and so adding more training to get our staff with the newer skills and everything that they need to support us in the future. And then capital hardware, we're looking to roll out security cameras here for the Government Center. That's over 100 cameras. Get cameras out at the community centers that don't have them, and also working with other departments like Health, Human Services, and fire stations, get those equipped as well. So on the budget request, you'll see we had a 40% reduction in contractual services. Part of that was changing vendors and getting, better coverage at a better price. We did have to pick up $10,000 actually buying the services instead of essentially leasing it. We were still looking at a net of a 30% reduction. The professional services I talked about, that's increasing, where we hadn't leaned on this service very much before with the turnover in this department and also the vacancies. We really had to rely on some professional services to help us. The gas usage, you see it went up a lot for propane. That was primarily that solar site, East Patrios, and some power issues that we had out there. So we went through a lot more propane, and so we're just budgeting for in case we continue to have issues with that. And that's it for communications. So for IT services budget request, so the top two, the subscription and systems maintenance, as I mentioned, we had those out of balance from the last fiscal year, so rebalancing those two, and you see one went down and one went up. But if you look at those two together, we went from 2 million to 2.2, so we had about 20% increase, which is in line with most software, tends to go up yearly 10 to 15%. That also includes where we had additional costs for Workday. Now that we're moving in the next fiscal year, we'll have a full year of it being in production. So we've been paying at reduced costs. And we also have costs in that for Banner. We're paying that in arrears, where we actually have to pay about another $100,000 for another year. So basically that $200,000 increase is covered by those two alone. Office equipment and furniture, that is increasing. That's essentially us catching up from COVID and replacing our desktops. In that 5-year refresh plan, we're replacing about almost 300 desktops and peripherals and components that go with that. Contractual services, also in the IT area where we've had vacancies or we've had key personnel that have been out on extended leave, we've had to lean more on professional services and contractual services to help us in those areas. And also they help support our projects to accomplish our strategic goals that we have planned. And that's all I had on that one. That's the end of my presentation. I'm here for any questions you might have.
Awesome. Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Sanchez.
I did have a couple of questions for Kent. I know you had talked about trying to work on connectivity for community centers and even improving the sites that still have DSL. Is there any possibility in where instead of specifically, because I think the microwave has to have line of sight, is there any potential for us to be looking at other opportunities like Starlink or things where technology has come to maybe improve over the past few years versus that? And I don't, like I said, I know this is up your alley, so I'm just curious as you're looking at it and evaluating what the prospects are for something like that.
We actually had a couple of sites. I think we still got one site that actually uses satellite. And in the latency, that currently is a higher elevation satellites, and so the latency is not very good, so you couldn't effectively stream video or anything like that. We haven't looked at the low orbit, like Starlink, like you talked about. The cost there is pretty expensive compared to us rolling out the microwave for now until we can get more broadband, but that's definitely something that we could look at.
I think the equipment costs were the significant amount of investment for that, but I just was curious about that. The other one was, you talked about needing the professional services because of not having people in-house to be able to do some of these services. Is there any way, and I guess I guess I'd even ask the county manager as well, is there any potential for us to be looking at, and not just in IT, but other departments where we're maybe trying to tie in more closely with NMSU or DACC, with some students that are graduating, to create a pipeline where we may be able to pay for, I know you had some costs for training and such.
Right.
But I'm just wondering if that might be an opportunity for us to be able to start looking at having a pipeline, bringing in talent, even if it means that we may be the ones that have to pay for certain certifications. But that might be an opportunity for us to look as a condition of employment, to allow them to come work with us, get certifications. Then we have that in-house rather than having to outsource it. And then in the meantime, maybe creating a pipeline of talent for us here at the county.
We do look at that. We also look at internal promotions and including training with that. The challenge in this particular issues is we've got senior level positions and very specialized skills that are out that generally college graduates coming out of school can't immediately make an impact. In the areas where we've got multiples of those positions, those are great ones where you can bring in somebody to train because they have somebody there to mentor them. But when I've got senior positions to come in, I can't really bring in somebody to train in that area because they're actually expected to train the other staff that are below them. And so it's working with HR, they've been great. I've gone from being about 35% vacancies down to about 12. That's not counting some people that I have out now on extended leave. But so we're making progress in getting up to full staff, but I still have those key positions in IT. Positions have been very difficult to fill, especially the more senior levels, and getting them in the pay grades that we have available.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I appreciate the kind of digging into some more of the details. So thank you, Ken. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Cool. Any other questions? Seeing none.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
Moving on to community development. Welcome, Ms. Amesworth.
Good
Good
morning. Thank you,
morning.
Mr. Chair. So we have the community development strategic measures and milestones. They're in front of you. One of the things we've been doing in the last 4 or 5 years is acquiring grants to build trails throughout the county, and we hope to continue to add miles of trail. We've had the efficiency review in the last couple of years as well, and so some of these strategic measures are related to increasing our services, continuing to improve our services efficiency. We have been tracking number of permits, review times, inspection turnaround times. We will continue to do so. We also track commercial square footage developed, as well as other types of permits that we issue. We will be monitoring, especially now that we will have our new software implemented, we will be able to keep better track of review times, ensuring that permits don't get lost in the system, and staying on track with our target times. We also hope to start a couple of comprehensive planning projects. We will not do a complete update of the comprehensive plan at this point, but there are some additional planning projects that we hope to accomplish. The next few milestones are related to our new economic development position and hoping to grow that division of the department, finding ways to provide more local incentives, as well as prepare a strategic plan for that particular division to help it grow and provide services to the county. So our highlights, we did request 2 new positions. We have 1 administrative assistant in the department for the entire department. Our department has grown over the last 5 years. We've added probably about 10 positions during that time. We continue to remain very busy. We have a lot of clerical work that is exceeding the abilities of our current clerical staff, and so we would like to add a secretary to assist with those duties. We've also requested a laborer. We have currently 3 laborer positions, full-time positions. We would like to have 2 crews of 2, mainly because they go to pretty remote areas of the county picking up illegal dumping sites, and many times there are large items that require 2 people to remove. Additionally, the capital outlay request is to assist with those laborers. The track loader will help with some of the very large items. We are seeing an increase in construction debris that's illegally dumped, unfortunately. We try to work with our builders and subcontractors, but it still happens. And so some of those items, the laborers just physically can't lift them on their own. We also, of course, continue to acquire grants for our connectivity projects, and there's usually a local match. And then licensing and support for development services. So our new software is going to be more expensive than what we have been using. And so you will see that in our budget going forward as well. So our cost, the biggest increase here you'll see is for our data and systems maintenance, and that is for our new software. We are planning to do a fee analysis also, which you'll see in professional services. Our fees have not been updated in decades, and so we hope to be able to generate more revenue that way to try to compensate for the cost of our new software. Contractual services, you see a decrease there. We had a couple of vacancies in our permitting staff the last couple of years, and so we had been utilizing temporary staff, which now that those positions have been filled, we do not have a need for. Nothing really notable in our other line items. Those are the main ones that you'll see changes in. And that's it, unless you have any questions for me.
What do you think that the revenue could possibly be with the updates in the fees?
You know, it really depends on how bold we want to be. We are, you know, our fees, both in permitting and in land use applications, are quite a bit lower than other jurisdictions. What I envision is that we would do a stepped increase so we don't hit people with like double or triple the cost. But I mean, depending on, like I said, how bold we are, we might be able to double our revenue in those areas.
Do you plan on bringing anything to the board anytime soon on that?
We will not be ready yet with that analysis. I'm hoping to get the RFP out before the end of the fiscal year, but that's a project that we'll be running next fiscal year.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Sanchez, yeah.
Thank you. Christine, I think along those lines, I'd be kind of curious, and maybe this is, I don't know if this is at all encompassed in what you're looking at, but I would very much love to understand how, as we continue to move forward with looking at new developments and things like that, how we may start looking at impact fees and things like that, and maybe starting to look comprehensively across what it is we charge and how we kind of continue. I know that, you know, as we continue to grow and we see, as we've seen through this, we've seen an increase in cost because we're trying to continue to provide more services to those in the county and trying to figure out how can we find ways to make sure that as we continue to grow, we can continue to provide those to our residents. So I don't know if that's part of the plan or not.
It's not
completely different conversation.
It's not. It is a completely different project, but it has come up multiple times in the last couple of years since I've been here, and so it is something that we've had some preliminary conversations on. Impact fees, they're regulated by the state, and so there's a very specific analysis that needs to be conducted, and they have to be structured a certain way. So I'd be happy to work on that project as well. And so I can have some further discussions and see how we may get started on something like that.
Okay, and then the other one, I know, I don't think it necessarily specific to the budget, and maybe it will require some additional cost, but I would, as we continue on here, in the implementation of the strategic plan, and you're working with all of these different steps, I would love, maybe to understand how we may be able to start looking at maybe some of the ordinances that, where there might be opportunities to update some of them as we go forward. I know we've heard this comment very often in our, I want to say when we have our appeals for some of the zoning changes or when things of those nature come up, or permits that come up for special use permits that come up, is the comment that we're moving to the county so that we don't have to follow the rule, or it's more, we get more freedom in the county. And while I understand that sentiment, I think as we've continued to grow, is there any opportunity that maybe we start looking at how we redefine some of our some of the ordinances we have in place? And I don't know if it might make sense to maybe come up, and maybe it exists already, but I would love to understand, is there a chance for us to have a calendar, like every year, certain lists of, or certain ordinances are reviewed for updates? So we do certain ones this year, then next year we do another set, and so on, until it becomes kind of a recurring thing, just to make sure that we are at least getting some eyes on it, and maybe there's some best practices we can implement as we continue to learn and evolve as a county.
Absolutely, and we do obviously do regular updates to it, and we could take a more structured approach where we look at specific sections. We will have some further amendments that we'll bring to you later in this calendar year, but you're right, we do as well need to be looking at it in a structured manner to ensure that it's maintained up to date, and that we're working with any new trends that come about and reacting to what it is that the people need in the county.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Ainsworth.
Thank you.
Next up, we have OEM. Stephen Lopez.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Commission. Stephen Lopez for the Office of Emergency Management. And just real briefly on our strategic measures, thanks to your efforts, we have already addressed the first bullet point, which is being able to fund the new Office of Emergency Management and Emergency Operations Center facility. We also have underway implementing a new model of Emergency Operations Center operations, which is using the incident support model, and that has been going well since we really rolled it out last August. We are in the process of updating the all hazards plan, and we have a contractor pending the purchase order finally going through this week. Have a contractor standing by to help us with that effort. We are completing the 3-year cycle for our threats, hazards, identification, and risk analysis. We are actually about 9 months ahead of schedule on that, and so we already started this month the next 3-year cycle. We've had really good participation from all of the public safety agencies throughout Doña County, and including in the municipalities. And so this next 3-year plan will be even better than the last one. And we do have, we kind of lead a regional effort on that. So the Doña County Threats, Hazards, and Identification Risk Analysis Plan ends up being the backbone for 7 other counties in our region, because they recognize that we are probably going to be the first to assist them in a disaster before they're able to get state assistance, just due to the geographic nature of New Mexico. We are already into the second version of our draft on the Family Assistance Center plan for Doña County. That is, in the case of a disaster, how do we help people where they're at? How do we meet their needs for information, for mental health services, for family reunification, or whatever else may be necessary? And we're looking forward to that being one of the very first annexes that is written by our contractor to the all hazards plan. We have implemented the national qualification system, as we mentioned during our annual report a couple of weeks ago, and we are just that next to the last one. We are awaiting a grant, hopefully, that will come in that will allow us to update our community wildfire preparedness plan, which is 12 years out of date. So we're right at a dozen. We don't want to make it a baker's dozen. If that grant does not come through, we'll be coming back and looking for other opportunities on it. And then the transition for public safety agencies to the 700 megahertz radio transition has been going extremely well, as you heard Chief Cherry mention earlier today. Reports from the field are coming in that it is really an improvement over what we've had. And so right now, we are at the stage of Mesilla Valley Regional Dispatch Authority upgrading their radio consoles at MRVDA. As soon as they have those upgraded, we'll be ready to start that transition of agencies to the 700 megahertz system for daily use. And right now, that is scheduled for July of this year. So we will have progress here in just a few months. On our budget requests, most of our budget is flat. We were able to make adjustments within categories in order to keep that mostly flat. We have no new personnel requests, and all of our current positions are filled. We are asking for a little bit for additional office equipment, which is for laptops. All desktop computers are centrally funded. However, laptops are the responsibility of the departments, and as we look at getting into our new facility, we've made the identification that we really need not only to replace our old laptops, but we also need to have a cache of laptops that can be utilized in the Emergency Operations Center when people come in to assist us so that they have something to work off of. Those will also be available then for use during large training sessions that require IT resources. Frequently we get requests for the EOC to be utilized because we do have 12 computers that people can work off of for things like banner training. And so as we make that transition to Workday and there's other training that requires an IT room, we'll be able to support that much better. We are asking for some more money on translation services. We have found out that at 20 cents a word, we can burn through that very rapidly. We are also needing to increase, because we are now fully staffed, a little bit more for uniform items, business meals, travel, and telephone in order to meet the needs of the full staff. And we are asking for a little bit more on subscription-based IT because, as you noted from IT's discussion, costs of those are going up each year. We are asking for one capital purchase for a one-time purchase of a rough terrain forklift and trailer. It'd be a skid steer-based forklift so that we can do a better job out in the rural areas, places that don't have good pavement, for being able to do things like that bottled water distribution. And then, as we hinted at, we are asking for some funding to start that community center, public access, AED program, CPR classes, and first aid classes. So there's a look at our budget, and you can see where there are some significant reductions there in overall items. And happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephen. Any questions from the commission? Yeah, none. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up we have Fleet. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chair. Erica Enriquez with the Fleet Department. Gabe is out, so be patient with me. Okay, so we're gonna start off with our strategic measures and milestones. We are gonna start doing department surveys. We used to do them before and we did stop, so we're gonna start doing that again. We are gonna look at some options. We used to do paper. We're gonna look at other stuff. Going with electric vehicles. So we do currently have 3 EVs. We are expecting 8 for FY '24, and they are on order. We are expecting roads, building services, vector control, the HHS, and IT before June. So we do have highway vehicles, 220. Out of all those, we have 110 that are potentially to be replaced with EVs. So the completion of ASC certifications, we do have ASCs that the mechanics and fleet personnel can take. Our goal is for our mechanics to become ASC masters. Right now, we do have 19% of the exams that have been taken. We do have an incentive plan that mechanics do get paid 25 cents per test when it's passed. So that goes in hand with retaining fleet staff. And also we do have training as well. Billable hours, we use it as a shop. We do flat rate, similar to the shop. So our goal is 100 hours per month, minimal. Billable hours, so we do work as a team to produce the minimal, and we currently have 700. The last one is vehicle replacement. Gabe did have his presentation February 7th. And we just continue to replace vehicles when they meet certain criteria. Okay, our FY25 highlights. So we have DASO. We're getting the 35 Explorers, which 25 are replacing current vehicles, 10 are additional. And then we have the 1.9, which is 5 new vehicles, which are all EVs. 3 are for codes and 2 are for building services. We're working on the charging stations, which are gonna be grant funded. I'm not exactly sure on the grant. I believe Jonathan has more information on that, but we are expecting 16 in the next couple of months. We did have to increase the light duty repairs, 110,000. Parts and outside labor has gone up. Fuel increased 10,000. Fuel usage for each department keeps high. Our car rental, I guess there's more trainings for within the departments. Oil lube also increased. And last one is video cameras. We are still working on that. Our current GPS vendor wasn't able to complete the system. I believe the videos took too long to download. So we are looking at other vendors right now for the cameras. And I guess overall GPS. Budget, our personnel costs, 6%, which includes overtime. And vehicle maintenance, 25% due to parts and outside labor. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Manny, any EV questions?
No, just kidding.
No, I think I'm kind of excited. I think you kind of answered of where we're at with some of these that are on order. And so I'm excited to see them come in, as well as seeing our infrastructure start to get rolled out. As you mentioned, it's grant funded.
Yes.
And so, like I said, I think I'm excited for what it could mean for hopefully a reduction in maintenance costs and things like that as we start to slowly explore and get into the use of EVs and hybrids to hopefully reduce some of those maintenance costs that we have. So.
Yes.
But other than that, no questions.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. Next up, we do have animal control. Welcome, Ms. Ward.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Mary Lou, Animal Control. See if I can find the arrow down. There we go. So we'll start with our strategic measures and milestones. For animal control, first thing was to create an annual publication of collected case studies that feature how animal advocacy groups support our animal control department. So these studies will support our local ordinance in reference to TNR, like trap, neuter, and return requirements, and our field return to owner benefits for animal owners and our shelter environments. So we've already have some meetings scheduled with some of these advocates to start this process. Our next thing is to invite the animal advocacy groups for acknowledgement and celebrations during the month of April throughout the strategic plan period. So thank you all for the proclamation last week. That was a start for this, and it's something that will continue throughout the year for this process as we go forward. Complete an annual strategic planning session with the City of Las Cruces and the county and the Animal Services Center of Mesilla Valley on strategic planning. So this is in the planning stages, and we'll start in the middle of May. And then continue with the ACES project on the annual basis and in partnership with DASO, educating the community on domestic violence. And so our ACES have, as you all know, is in full swing, and statistics are updated in our Achieve It process, our system, the new system that we're all going forward with. And DASO has already partnered with us and have already started one event where we have gone to the community where we are working on this process, this new process. Reduce the number of stray animals collected by animal control through education, awareness, enforcement, and providing resources of rural areas in the county for long-term goal to establish decrease in the number of animals for stray calls and stray animals. So that'll be a long-term goal for us. And then increase the number of animals returned to the owner in the field. So our department has undergone some training, in-house training that's I would say it's a national training for real return to owner in the field. And that's a training that we will update periodically throughout the time. In addition, we have ordered updated microchip scanners to aid us in this process. And then, of course, establish goals around spay and neuter outcomes in rural areas, training the officers in educational events among the communities due to a new veterinarian position being filled. As we found out last week, our veterinarian has went ahead and accepted the position. So that is coming shortly. So we'll develop some short-term and long-term goals for our veterinarian as we establish herself and evaluate the areas that she's going to be providing those goals for. And then lastly, assemble a vicious and or dangerous animal task force. This process has been started and is in the early planning stages. So looking at our highlights for this, if we look at our first professional services, there's really no change for that, and that is items for such as rabies submissions. Whenever we pick up an animal that we suspect for maybe have some rabies submission, a bite dog or a bat or something like that, we have to send off to the state lab, or a necropsy, or any animal that needs to go into the vet that's been held at our court hold facilities for veterinary services. And then contractual services has been lowered 50,000, and that's for additional services. And so since we're fully staffed now, we're not anticipating as much as we had from last year. Special projects requested is 10,000 lower, and that's for additional things for like vaccinations, things that an overflow that maybe that the SNAP, the spay and neuter program that we use this time, the 40,000 that we added from last year, the overflow. And then renovations that's requested is a $15,000 increase this year that we're going to use for the outside of the building and any added updates for the Griggs office. So this is the overflow of the budget, and if you could see, the 100,000 is not included. It's in the PILT for the spay and neuter services. So for that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions, commissioners?
None, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, welcome.
Good morning, Commission. Bill Province, Airport Manager.
Sorry. Welcome.
Good morning, not a problem. The Airport Master Plan is a requirement, 15 to 20-year plan. It's a requirement by the FAA, and the last time it was updated is 2018 with all the changes we've had, including the changes to the boundary. We need a new airport master plan and an airport layout plan, which is part of the master plan. The department priorities to complete the widening and strengthening of the runway that is grant funded. Right now, we only have an instrument approach to runway 10. We need an instrument approach to runway 28 for our air cargo operations. That will be grant funded. At least the initial part of it, the annual maintenance will be part of our annual budget. Complete planning and design for taxi lane D extension for corporate hangars. It will be grant funded. That will open up land for approximately 30 to 35 corporate hangars. One of our ongoing projects is to build a second runway, a future cargo runway, and we are working on the state land swap with BLM in order to get the section in the middle of the runway that we need. And airport business development is also high on the list. There's no cost to that, but we're looking at the logistics park and other businesses such as air cargo, increase the number of land leases, and even like to have a hotel on the airport property at some point. With the hiring of our airport maintenance worker, we are now fully manned, and we do not have any new positions being requested for next year. We are looking at a lease management software subscription to manage our 170 lease contracts. Hopefully, we will offset that by some administrative fee, but we're still looking at how to exactly offset that cost, which will be about $6,000 to $7,000. This software subscription will increase our tenant services, access to their accounts. Right now, the only way they can pay is by check, and with this new system, hopefully we will be able to have credit card payments for land leases. Right now, we're 20% complete on widening and strengthening runway 10-8. It said we expect to lay asphalt on the north half of the runway starting today. We actually started that last Thursday. The entire project is expected to be completed by the mid-December of this year. And overall, we have a budget reduction of 6%. So, any questions?
Any questions, commissioners? Seeing none?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. For financial services, this is Financial Services Director Asma Daud. The strategic measures and milestones, one of the items that we are very excited about is we would be going live with Workday. We will transition from Banner in July 2024, and several of our strategic measures are linked to that change. This would affect all the departments in the county, specifically finance, HR, IT, and treasurer's work. So once we go live with Workday, some of the things we would be looking at would be explore the use of financial dashboards to utilize Workday. We plan to do that by December 2024. We would also assess efficiencies of Workday by 2025, compare it to our current processes in Banner. We will explore the process of preparing dashboard for ARPA expenditures and share it with the public using Achieve It by 2025. We will also align our budget book preparation with the strategic plan, and we plan to move to a 3 to 5 year budgeting process to align with the strategic planning updates by 2027. So other than that, we are also currently exploring the option of a potential need for indirect cost rate. Currently, the county does not have an agreement for indirect cost rate, and what we are allowed to request on federal grants is 10% de minimis. So we are working with the auditors, and we have asked Health and Human Services to be our cognizant agent, so we could apply for a rate which would help us do better cost recovery for the grants that we apply in future. The budget request for financial services, overall, there is a decrease of 7,786. Some of the bigger items that we have are our audit for 99,500. We just did an RFP. It was at the last BOCC meeting. For contractual services, we have 377,550, of which Insights contract is 225,000 plus GRT. The rest of it is for grant-related work, which comes up throughout the year. For purchasing, the budget is flat, and their biggest request is 25,000, which covers their leases and postal meters. So this is the financial services and purchasing budget. For financial services, the increase is 19,000 for audit services based on the new RFP. Other than that, overall, there is a decrease in budget. For purchasing, the budget is flat. 742 has been moved from office supplies to operating costs. Please let me know if there are any questions.
Commissioners? Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Dawa.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Sheljo Hernandez, Commissioners, Meg Haynes, HR Director. I'm excited to stand here today and let you know that we are going live with Workday, our new ERP system, in July. Part of the new ERP system will enable employees to update their personal information through self-serve instead of filling out paper forms and waiting. It'll pretty much be an immediate process. Let's see. Also, supervisors and managers will be able to see information on their employees in real time instead of having to request the information. Once any changes are made in the system, they're real time, so everybody will have the ability to see that based on their security. The other part of Workday is to enable better tracking of our processes. And so part of our measures are by January 2025 to have a plan for tracking measures. Also automating our processes and enhancing onboarding, which will improve our services. Also on our strategic measures is to ensure our workforce is reflective of the community it serves. With an increase in training, ensuring workforce is reflective of our community. We will do that by working with local agencies and enhancing our attendance for job fairs, local job fairs. Okay, so some of the highlights of what we're requesting. As you've heard throughout the morning, with an increase in hiring, there's an increase in medical screening, especially for public safety positions, and also there have been increase in costs, as you've been hearing throughout the morning too. Also with professional services for background checks, once again, with an increase in hiring, increase in background checks, we're also looking to add enhancements to public safety backgrounds. And for the budget request, as you can see, we're asking for a minimal increase of 5%, overall $131,225. Based off of where we're at for fiscal year 24, our retiree insurance premiums, we're looking at a decrease for that. We are looking at increase in professional services and medical expenses based off of what I said earlier, on the increase in hiring, increase in costs. And then, let's see, most of our increases in HR are due to the increase in hiring and recruitment. And I guess that's it. I stand for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Meg.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, legal.
Actually, sorry, Meg, right, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman?
Meg.
I apologize.
Sorry.
I know as we, you're looking at I guess for the health insurance costs, are we seeing, and I see here under that we have the self-funding health insurance for 55,000, but is there additional costs that we're expecting to see as we look to this year's health insurance? And if it's not here, maybe I'm missing it. Is that another department? I see it. Okay, I see Lucio. Then I'll wait till then. Or did I miss that from earlier on the title pages or the kickoff?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sanchez, so the health insurance is typically charged to each department based on employees' group insurance elections. So it's within the personnel costs. And I believe the 55,000 within Human Resource Department is more so for any of the health fairs that come up during the year, vaccinations that are offered by the county within the insurance plan.
Okay. Thank you, and I appreciate that. I didn't know, and this is just as a note, and I think we're coming up on renewal or this year's plans, but didn't know, or God, when we're looking at the healthcare that we provide to our employees, is there any way that we've taken, or have we looked at what services in particular have been those that have been used significantly, those that maybe not so much, and trying to figure out how we can tailor a medical plan that maybe would be of more benefit to our employees, where maybe they have lower costs for items that are used frequently, and then higher costs for those services that they may not, that are used infrequently, just so that, not to make them out of reach, but done in such a way that we find kind of a happy medium for a majority of our employees.
Chair, Commissioner Sanchez, Yes, we have looked at that this year. We will have a benefits presentation at the April 23rd meeting with our consultant from Gallagher. But basically, we have looked at usage to see if there is a better way to structure our co-pays. And what we found is utilization across the board is not even, but it's a fair distribution. We looked at it and decided that there's probably not a great way to change things. If, for example, if we were going to change the co-pays for primary care physician versus specialist, you may see a negative effect for people one way or another. The same thing with ER visits versus urgent care. So we did look at that carefully to assess if there was a place where we could change things around. And the consultant pretty much said, based off of the numbers, based off of usage, he was recommending that we keep it the same. We have a very competitive benefits plan. And as you'll see in a couple of weeks, we're looking at, or next week, we're looking at a very minimal increase in premiums too.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Oh, yes, excuse me. One other change that we had made last year was mental health co-pays and medications, and so that's already in place too. So that was a positive change that we made, that the county decided to make last year.
Okay, great.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Appreciate it, Meg. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Mr. Gooden.
Good morning, Commissioners. So Nelson Gooden, County Attorney, Head of the Legal Department. So just kind of want to go through a little bit what we're looking for, what we're asking for, and kind of what our measures are, our priorities are. Our biggest priority is to provide quality and timely legal advice to the county through the commissioners, county manager, the HR department, and we provide that advice to the departments that ask. Basically, our goal is to do that in a timely manner and to give the best advice possible. We do provide, our office does provide some defense in non-insurance claims against the county. So primarily, if there's a claim that is brought against the county that is covered by our insurance, it goes to NMAC or the Association of Counties insurance pool. They assign the attorneys, they pay the attorneys subject to our deductibles, which Mr. Maurer will talk a little bit about during his presentation. But there are occasionally some cases that we get involved in individually that our office actually defends, or that we hire some attorneys with more expertise to defend those particular claims. We do bring some claims ourselves against the county. They are fairly limited, but on occasions we have actually filed suits on behalf of the county against individuals. We provide defense oftentimes for some of the elected officials department. For example, the clerk's office is dealing with some of the election stuff they get drug into. We tend to provide that assistance to them. And then the other thing our department does is handles internal investigations. If they're involving a claim of discrimination for under a protected class, those are done through our investigator, or sometimes we hire an outside investigator to do that. And then also if it involves workplace violence, we handle that investigation as well. Again, either through our internal investigator or hiring one from the outside. And as requested, we may do other investigations as well. So that's kind of what we do. Our priorities are what we're trying to accomplish. So then next would be our highlight budget requests. We're not asking for any other positions at this point in time. A couple of years ago, we did convert one of our attorney positions to an IPRA coordinator. And so sometime in the future, we may be coming back asking for that attorney back. At this point, we're not doing that for this fiscal year, so we're not asking for any additional positions. We're asking for a decrease in our budget for this year, at least Lucio's asking for a decrease in our budget. But I think it's doable, and I think we're still able to do what we need to do with that. One of the big issues we have that we deal with at trying to do our budgeting is our professional services area. When the county has somebody asking for an IRB, internal industrial revenue bond, part of that process is we hire an attorney to go through the bond documents, prepare the bond documents, and we budget that in our budget, and we pay for it out of our budget. However, then the applicant comes back and reimburses the county for that, but it goes into the general fund. So sometimes we're kind of like, how many of these are going to happen? We don't know. It's really not a big financial concern to the county because we get the reimbursement back, but it's just how the budgeting's handled. We have in years past had to come in during mid-year saying we need more money because there were more than anticipated, but the money was there because the individual entity paid for it. And I say the other thing we have listed here under that we deal with professional services is retaining attorneys to provide additional services in specialized area. We also, under our HR policies and procedures, if there's a disciplinary action and the individual's contesting that, wants a hearing on it, under our policies, we have a hearing officer that's from outside the county. That contract goes through the legal department, even though it may be somewhat HR related. They flow through our budget as well. So that's part of our professional services. So it looks like a big dollar. It is a big dollar, but there's a lot of things that go into that. And so as you'll see then, as we're looking at what our budget request is, personnel costs is an increase of 15%. Again, I indicated there's no request for additional positions, but this goes somewhat in line with what Meg and Deb were talking about with how the increase of medical expenses, premiums, and that type of stuff get handled. We are, as I mentioned, professional services, we're actually asking that we would decrease our budget there by $27,000 and some change, giving us a decrease there, so making our overall budget request being 7% overall when you factor in the personnel costs, but for our operating costs itself, a 5% decrease. With that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, any questions? I'm not hearing any. Thank you, Nelson. Next up, we do have risk management. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Steve Mauer, Risk Manager. How you doing? So today for our milestones that we're talking about for risk management, to identify, our department identifies any type of risk to the county and tries to figure out how we can minimize those risks. Earlier today, you heard a place about cameras in the cars. This is something that I've been working with the fleet manager to put cameras in our vehicles for front viewing and forward and rear facing vehicles. The cameras in there so that we can make sure that it helps cut down on auto claims and people distracted driving and stuff that we're working on with that. We are probably finishing up our pilot program, and I think we're getting ready to make a decision of who we're getting into it, because as you heard with Fleet, they talked about the last pilot program we did. The cameras and getting the video back was taking just way too long. So we're working with another company, and it seems like that one's working a lot better. The other thing we talk about is placing cyber insurance for Doña County. I've been working with IT Director Kent. We're trying to figure out some different loopholes that we have to find or deal with. We're dealing with a different company this year. This is their second year renewed with them. Seems to be working a lot better. We're finding a lot more stuff with it, so that's been working out real well. Like normal, we always talk to our broker. We're always looking for better rates for law enforcement and multi-line insurance. Last year, I came to you guys to the board to give a letter to the Association of Counties so that we could actually go out and look for this, so that we gave them notice that we might be moving. You never know where that happens at. Also, not too long ago, we talked about the application for New Mexico Workers' Comp Associations to become self-insured. We got some more information on that that we will be bringing up to you guys on the next board meeting for that process. Helping with IT, also dealing with better cameras in the government building and the parking lots. Since we're going to the Verkada system, it makes it a little bit better for us to identify stuff that's going out on the parking lots and the cameras that we've got and inside internal. It's working real well. And then, like I said, we're also working with the legal team and myself and Risk and Ron. We're doing this adjuster training program so that we can have a little better idea of what's going on with claims and how to make them move forward and be better for Doña County. Our highlights, no additional people at this point in time or personnel. Risk management has a net decrease. I don't know why, but we're making some better decisions, so we're getting better stuff for it. We had 2 lines of increase, which is the workers' compensation. Before we've started going into looking into self-insured or other insurance places, Commissioner Maria was at one of our meetings that we had for New Mexico Association of Counties, and they voted to have a capital adequacy funding. And they're looking at charging Doña County a little over $206,000 additional to the workers' comp premium. My understanding is they had a meeting not too long ago, and they're talking about changing that from a 5-year plan to a 3-year plan, and possibly getting, asking for more money at this point in time. I haven't seen the whole processes, but that's where we're at. So that's gonna be one of the increases that we're talking about for us, and then the other one's talking about contractual services, which is for the security for our building during everyday routines that are happening. And again, for our law enforcement insurances, we're always trying to keep better insurance rates for the detention center and sheriff's department. So we've changed a little bit of our deductibles on this part. We're getting a little better rate for that, and a little more bang for the buck at that point in time. And the same thing with our multi-line insurance. We've been doing really good for all the employees, not having a whole lot of incidents or accidents. And some of our liability claims have gone down for that part. On our budget, as you can see, net operating costs, we're at 0. We did real good at this, speaking with Lucio and getting things taken care of. Our 2 line items, like I said, is gonna be the biggest increase for us is gonna be the workers' compensation. We went from 700 to 900,000, which is $200,000 increase, or 29%. And then the contractual services is what we're moving up with that, of a $40,000 increase. Other than that, I'll stand for any questions if you have anything.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Nope. Great, thank you.
Sir, thank you. Next up, PIO, Ms. Skipper.
Good morning, Commissioners. Anita Skipper, Chief Public Information Officer for Doña County. These items listed are from the strategic plan. A couple of our strategic measures or milestones include ways that we can be innovative in how we communicate what the county does to our community. Also complete phase 1 of the brand standardization and assets by June 2025. We understand that the whole brand strategy is not a one-time thing, but it's an overtime process, the change, the familiarity with the brand. Track and assess internal measures associated with the services the PIO provides. The Public Information Office not only serves requests from the public, but we also have internal customers who submit requests daily. And so just communicating the different ways we can support the department. We now have a tracking system that allows us to look at the analytics around how many requests we come in, the type of requests, and the most effective ways to get our messaging out to the public. As far as our fiscal year 25 highlights, printing and publishing, we have standing ads with the Las Cruces Bulletin and Camino Real, which allows us to reach our Spanish reading audience as well. And it increased slightly because the cost for those ads will go up a little bit in the next year. Special projects, This is the line item that's been on my budget even prior to me starting at the county. It was specifically for the branding and image campaign, which we are in the middle of now. And so the 50,000 is a reduction. You'll see on the next slide, a reduction from what was previously there. But it's for continued brand reinforcement as well as any unplanned public outreach for the year. And then promotions is an increased category. You'll see on the next line for purchasing Doña County promotional items. That's something we tend to, maybe by department we may have on hand. HHS may have some things that they distribute at their events, but just in general, Doña County items we didn't have on hand. And so we are using these funds to purchase more Doña County promotional items for us to share with our partners as we go out to community events. The county manager goes to the legislative session, different places, and he often needs to have some items, and we have not had that on hand. As far as the budget, the largest changes you'll see is the special projects, the reduction last year. Well, prior to last year, that number was about $139,000, and we reduced it last year to $95,000. Understanding that once it was needed, we would be able to spend the $139,000. But because we have now implemented the branding campaign, we are reducing that amount to $50,000. And that is just for continued reinforcement as we move forward. The data systems maintenance numbers reduced by everything except $500. Because our previous data system, all of that is being moved to IT's budget. The website, that was under PIO's budget previously, but IT will be taking over that. And then promotions, that's what I discussed, the promotion items. They're the increase of $20,000, because that's something we would have to replace as we continue, as those items are depleted. Our professional services, that is an increase to $16,000 because we currently have a designer on contract, and that was previously under data systems management maintenance as well. And so it's moved to its rightful place under professional services. So it's not new money. We just had to properly categorize some expenses. And that is it for me. I'll stand for any questions you have.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I just had one comment.
Yeah, of course.
I'm excited because I'm really loving the slides, the templates, and also I think I've started seeing a few of our vehicles from the different departments out in the community now with the new logo as you're starting to get those decals put onto the vehicle. So I'm excited to see kind of the rollout of it. I know it's been a long time coming. I know you've been working on it for a while, but I'm excited to see how you're doing that and the continued rollout of this as we're starting to create that new brand. So I appreciate all of your, you and your staff's efforts on this.
Thank you.
With that also, I think a lot of people have really come out enjoying the impact report. I think a lot of people are looking at that and understanding exactly what the county does. So I just want to thank you and your staff for that again as well, because people are really enjoying it.
Thank you. And we're looking forward to expanding on those items. Part of the expansion of the branding and image is not just being on paper, because we understand that some people may never read the impact report. So we have to show what we're doing. And so we're looking forward to incorporating more things where we're outlining, this is something you brought to our attention, here's how we addressed it, and putting it out in different ways so that the public will see that we are doing a lot of the things that maybe they're just unaware of. So we're excited about the opportunity to do more.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Community and Constituent Services. What's up, Lucio?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Lucio Luttrell, Budget and Research Officer. Our Constituent Services Manager, Liz Reed, is not in attendance today, so I am presenting on her behalf. So I will begin with Community and Constituent Services, measures and milestones. The first few bullets go hand in hand The first one, first event held in Spanish language with English interpretation for strategic planning. And the measure percent of strategic planning events held in Spanish with English interpretation. So as this was explained to me, this is part of language justice and will assist in dismantling language barriers while building stronger relationships with communities. This technique will help to ensure individuals do not feel suppressed in their ability to speak. We also have number of accommodations for communications in Spanish and American Sign Language as examples. Number of commission-led events held by county to engage the community, percent increase in attendance at commission-led community engagement events, percent increase in response rates to commission-led engagement events, percent increase in response rates to commission-led community engagement surveys, and exploration of after-hours online or in-person citizen engagement. Moving on to request highlights. First item, funding to support the county's constituent services platform intranet quorum. Continue efforts to fully implement and leverage the outreach and functionality of the software. Also more training for IQ users. We're continuing to build the system's capacity and learning new functions. So as it's a robust system, it will take a while. It has been live for less than a year. I haven't personally experienced using the software, but it sounds like you may be more familiar with it than I am. We also have county's external ethics and compliance hotline ethics points. So this is required under HR policies and procedures under section 10-8 complaints. And then the last bullet point, requested funding under special projects account to support the county strategic plans, belonging and civic muscle vital condition measures for department. So as things come up, there will be budget available to address them. In looking at the overall budget, there is a 4% decrease. The large line item is data system maintenance with a 9% increase. But FY24 is the department's first year as a standalone budget. Beforehand, it was included with Public Information Office. So over the next few years, we'll be able to understand the true costs that it takes to run the constituent services section. With that, I stand for any questions.
Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Commissioner Sanchez.
And I know, Lucio, you're not, probably not the person to ask this. Actually, I was hoping Nelson would still be here, but I think one of the things that we need to, I don't know if it's part of the county management budget or not, but as we had approved the code of conduct ordinance and the update of moving towards a compliance officer, understanding where that is going to fit in the budget. And I think one of the reasons I look at it is because right now we talk on, or it was highlighted, the cost for the compliance hotline and the ethics point. Understanding how we're going to roll that out, if that's, how that all report in, if that will also go to the compliance officer, and or if that would still go to constituent services. So it's just something that I think is we move forward. And I know Lucio won't be the person to answer this, but it'll be something I'm kind of curious then of how we plan to roll it out. And I think that was part of why I wanted to have that delayed the delayed introduction of it for the ordinance because of that. So that way we could hopefully start working through all these points, and then we can, as we move into the new fiscal year. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know, I'll follow up after, but I think that's one of the things I'll have a question on.
So the July 1st is the date, obviously.
For the effective date, yeah.
So the compliance officer would be based in legal.
Okay. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Welcome.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, Board of County Commissioners. Ernest Budden, your internal auditor. New last name. Yeah. Okay. So the internal audit activity, when I refer to the activity, it's myself and also the 5 members of the Internal Audit Advisory Committee that you've selected. We have a very ambitious undertaking. We're looking at the international standards of professional practices of internal auditing.
We want to get rated by them for conformance, and also the Institute of Internal Auditors Code of Ethics. So some departments would be very happy to hear this, but this is an audit the auditor deal where someone comes in and actually looks at my work and makes sure that we're up to standard. Okay. We're also looking at some out-of-state training, and that's going to be our focus is going to be data analytics. And we're looking at this as somewhat of a forces multiplier, where you have one internal auditor, but you have quite a bit of data to go through. And as we go more digital, this is something, learning those tools, that skill set will help me to go through more of the data and perhaps find some of the outliers. And of course, we have follow-up audits, and we want to do a multi-year risk assessment. Now, you notice the note up there. When it comes to the auditor, we want some input or oversight from the county manager as well as the Board of County Commissioners, and this just keeps things, we don't want the perception of potential conflicts of interest, like, oh, Ernest has a buddy that's going to do the audit for him, or is going to look over his stuff. So we'll get some input from you, involve you in that. So the big thing we got going on for this new fiscal year is we're preparing for that big peer review, out-of-state travel, training, follow-up audit. We do have one coming up, I know, with facilities and parks. I remember when the new director stepped in, he asked for a year so he can get some things taken care of, because I made him aware of the last audit report. And so we'll be doing that follow-up as well. We also want to take advantage of putting together a multi-year risk assessment. And so putting this plan together will kind of allow us to see where our greatest risk, where do we want to go as for the next department, and we can give those departments a heads up that, hey, internal audits is looking at coming in your area about this time of year, looking at these particular items. And so we do have a minimal increase there of 5% as we attempt to keep up with inflation. When you're looking at professional services, that would include the assessment coming from a peer review group. And normally what that has is professional practices. The people come over, or the person comes over to look at my work, and they're only getting, we only pay in the per diem. And so it's one of those things that that's done within the industry to help each other. So, and with that, I'll stand for questions.
Awesome. Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, just one question.
Yes.
Mr. Button, I know you talked on the auditor, and just a couple of questions around that, because you talk about recognizing the conformance to the Code of Ethics. So is that specific for certification of is it just of meeting the Code of Ethics, or is it a part of a certification process that we'd be looking at?
So, Mr. Chairman, yeah, Commissioner Sanchez, no, it's actually part of an overall international professional practices framework. So when we put this into place, it's something that pretty much goes on infinity. All you do is the next person just keeps up with it and keeps meeting those standards. So the Institute of Internal Auditor, they're the ones that bestow the Certified Internal Auditor. They do the Certified Internal Auditor exam, but they have the Code of Ethics. So this is meeting that standard, coming up to an international standard for our audit function here, our audit activity.
And when you talk on, I think, looking at it, I'm just curious, and would it ever be of any benefit, say, to bring in, and not I'm just thinking of like peers around the here, the local area or the state, to maybe take a look and help audit, or maybe take a look at, bring them in to perform one of the audits that you would normally do, but have them do it just to kind of see what a different set of eyes would do?
So yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Sanchez, so when we look at the auditor, this is a peer review of another professional coming in and looking at the audit work to say, hey, are you up to standards with doing this? And when you conduct this particular survey, or when you conduct this function, are you up to international professional practices standards? And so they'll give a grade to me, of course, which will be shared with the county manager and the Board of County Commissioners. And also that goes along with that, because I like hearing myself talk, you also have the charter that needs to be updated, and it has to be approved by the Board of County Commissioners, which would also go through the county manager. And that charter is going to have so many different standards that I have to meet. And so it may take a little back and forth because there'll be FaceTime with the board included in that standard. And the Board of County Commissioners may want me to present an audit report in public forum or, in the back, so.
Yeah. And the reason I guess I understand, like I said, where the auditor's coming in to see your work.
That's right.
And I'm not, like I said, I know everything that you do is above board. But I think I just wondering, like I said, if we were to bring in another auditor, someone local, that maybe takes a look at something, just to kind of see if they identify or hone in on anything different or identify, any other potential risks that maybe we don't, that you may not see because I think sometimes when we're in the organization, we get so used to understanding how we operate, where we look and so on, that maybe sometimes a different set of eyes looks and identifies something different. Like I said, it may not be, like I said, because I know you have a standard that you're looking at and trying to make sure that we are meeting. So maybe it isn't, it was just, I was just curious because I know in my, slightly different, but when I was an auditor, spoke specifically on, focused on the quality standards, the ISO quality standards of 9001, what we would do is we had our internal auditing processes that we would look at. So that would be myself as a quality leader with my staff. We would go and look at the various processes and assess that. Then we had the next layer, which was within our business, someone from the outside of our organization would come in, take a look, they would do their analysis. And then we had the third top, which was our certification group that would come in and certify us to, for ISO, meeting ISO 9001. But that's why I was just wondering, like I said, trying to figure out is it, it's not something you do on the norm or like a bunch of them. It was just kind of taking a look. But maybe the auditor will help.
That is, yes, Commissioner, that's supposed to actually do that. But it sounds like, Mr. Chairman, that the Commissioner Sanchez wants to expand the audit department. I could use some help if that's what we want to do, Commissioner. Yeah.
No, understand. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Now up to the county manager.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Lucio Luttrell, Budget and Research Officer, presenting on behalf of the County Manager Department. And so we do not have a specific strategic measure and milestone slide for the department, but the County Manager's Department role is oversight of the strategic plan and department's progress on goals and to make sure the departments have the appropriate resources to achieve the goals. And so that's really where the County Manager's Office steps into the strategic planning. Moving on to request highlights, the County Manager will have a flat operating budget for FY25. You'll see that on the next slide. The largest line item within the department's budget is professional services, $457,800. So it is used to pay for various management, and I would like to add commission-related initiatives because things come up during the year, and we address those items with professional service budget that we have. In the past, we've used it for Insight Network, Camino Real Media, Broad Spectrum, Wilson and Company, Jacobs, Garza and Associates, and the Alliance for Regional Military. We also have a travel and training line item of 63, or line items that add up to 63,500. So it is for the management team and other employees to attend necessary conferences and trainings. And lastly, contractual services of 19,400, and that's used for temporary employee services when employees are on leave. Looking at the budget overall, it's a 4% increase if we include personnel costs and operating costs. You'll see total operating costs is where there's a flat budget. We've shifted $12,200 around between various line items. With that, we stand for questions.
Any questions from the board? I see and hear none. Thank you, Lucy.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Luttrell, I did have a question, and I didn't know whether or not there was a plan to continue with Insight's contract for the strategic plan. I know that was one of the things that was noted, I think, during the last session with Ms. Natividad, was that that was going to be the conclusion of that process, or the contract. So I wanted to understand what the growth, or not the growth, excuse me, what the future is for that contract.
That was a decision by Insight, that they were going to focus on other areas, but that they didn't see a continued role in strategic planning.
It was my understanding that the issue is around the cost, or at least what was being presented to them. And the cost of the services was not matching what had previously been requested.
Yeah. No, I don't believe so. And there's plenty of money in the professional services line item that if those discussions are resurrected, or if there's a continuing role, there's sufficient money there to, I believe, sustain a contract. It was my understanding it was more by choice.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Macias. Thank you, Ms. Luttrell. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. So now we go with the next steps and the closing remarks. Lucio, will you be presenting this?
Madam Chair, so we did delay utilities and facilities
Okay.
presentation until Robert was able to attend. And so we will go back to utilities and facilities, and then we'll finish up with next steps.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, is it good afternoon?
Good
Sorry, good
afternoon.
afternoon. I'm still running around from other meetings. Let me catch my breath for a minute, please. Okay, so thank you, Chair, Commissioners. So I am Robert Herrera, Director of Utilities, Interim Director of Utilities, and I'm here to present our fiscal year budget. To begin with, we will, our strategic measures and milestones completion of the utility design standards to ensure consistency of new constructed infrastructure. We have seen a lot of subdivisions coming up, and we do not have an actual standard. So we are mirroring other entities that have construction standards in place, but we have procured the services of Bohannon and Houston to develop our own standards. So that way everything is uniform across the entire county. We are trying to establish a utilities master plan to meet the demand as the county becomes more urban, denser, and more diverse. We've also procured this, we're going to procure the services of Bohannon and Houston to do that. Offer utility staff access to professional development and opportunities to advance their careers. As you know, wastewater operators are hard to come by, and we want to establish a way where we can help them succeed and obtain their licenses that we require for advancement in their careers. And then we also want to replace the aging infrastructure in the treatment plant to reduce energy consumption and enhance energy efficiency. And increase revenue through innovative utility billing collection methods to increase or to create a viable utility. So fiscal year 25 requested highlights, requesting a wastewater operator 4 position. We also have capital outlay requests for the South Central Wastewater Treatment Plant to replace electrical feeders in the amount of $90,000. Upgrades to the surrounding area of $65,000. South Central wastewater maintenance increased from $300,000 to $380,000.
Excuse me, Mr. Herrera. Madam Vice Chair, if you wouldn't mind, would you be able to advance a slide on the screen?
Oh, I'm
as
sorry.
well? Sorry.
Apologize.
Got it. Thank you.
Maintenance increased from 300 to 380. South Central professional services increased from 40 to 60,000, and the recon wastewater system maintenance increased from 4,306 to 15,000, and the Chaparral professional services increased from 26 to 100,000. So personnel costs, a slight increase to 15%. Wastewater system maintenance, another increase of 19%. Debt services payments, 4%. Chemicals for for the facilities, 5%. We did have a reduction in electricity of approximately 10%. And then professional services did increase by 143,000%. And that is to cover all the anticipated design costs and also the studies and the design standards. Contractual services, 8%, and other operating expenses, 9%. Total operating cost of 6% and total operations of 9%. In our utilities budget for the environmental fund, contractual services, an increase of 2%, tipping fees, an increase of 5%, liability insurance, a decrease of 89%, and other operating costs stay the same. Testing, we did have an increase of 100%, and total operating expenditures of 85%. And with that, I will entertain any questions on the utilities budget.
Any questions from the board? Commissioner Chaparro?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Mr. Herrera, I'm just wondering, and I know one of the challenges that we hear often, especially when it comes to utilities, and has been around the backfill or trying to identify people for the positions that you're looking for. I know you're asking for 4 additional ones. Was it just one? I thought I saw.
Level 4.
Level 4. Got it. Okay. I misinterpreted the comment. I was looking for 4.
So you can give me 4, that's fine. That'll help out even
Well,
more.
I think the question, I think then you're even more the challenge. But I just wonder, I look at what the city of Las Cruces does with their utility program, having interns and bringing them up through the system. Is there any potential for us to be able to do something similar, to be able to create a pipeline? I know you weren't here when, unless you were hearing on the streaming, one of the things that I had asked was, how do we work on trying to create a pipeline for some of our positions, whether that be external, and I don't know if there might be potential to either do something similar as the city of Las Cruces, or even partner with them if there's any type of carryover between what they do and with our systems and our processes, as well as the potential to be able to fill some of these positions as they become vacant.
Madam Vice Chair, Commissioners, yes, that is something that I want to look into over the next couple of months. I do want to engage with the city and primarily the director, Adrian Whitmer over there. I would definitely like to be able to either, I guess, form some sort of alliance with them where they can train some of our potential candidates. I knew they do have a really nice school there on their campus there. And that is something that I do want to look at. We also, they also want to kind of, have discussions with Doña, Doña Community College, see if we can entice some people from there. The wastewater operator certification is universal to New Mexico. It all goes through New Mexico Environment Department. So if they work at there, or they work at an MSU or any other municipality or any other facility in the state, they can come and work here. So I'm hoping to entice some people over there, from over there. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Herrera. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Herrera.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to move on with the facilities and parks strategic measures and milestones. So the first initiative is the completion of a deferred maintenance plan for all county facilities. Right now, we do not have one, and I want to use that to be proactive in our capital requests. Completion of facility design standards to ensure consistency and efficiency in operation and maintenance. Again, all these renovations that we do throughout the entire county, I want to create a process where they remain consistent. And it's a lot easier for us to maintain when we have, a set standard instead of just anything that comes up at that time. Establish a Parks and Recreation Master Plan to meet or exceed National Recreation and Park Association standards. I think that is very important. I've heard a lot of input on wanting to upgrade our facilities. There's some people that, right now have concerns about how our outfields are dirt and have no grass. So I want to upgrade those facilities to meet those NARPA standards. I do definitely want to update our facilities condition index to identify future ICIP requests. I do believe we had one, I think it was in 2006 or 16, I can't remember. But I definitely do want to upgrade that and implement a process where we continually update it as we do projects, capital projects and maintenance projects. And then I want to develop a facilities master plan in alignment with the International Facilities Management Association standards. So I want to use their benchmarks to make sure that we are properly staffed and we properly have the tools in place to upkeep our facilities. So fiscal year 25 highlights. We are in the process of a space optimization study to implement and ensure effective space management.
Thank you, Robert.
Parks and recreation facility upgrades to meet or exceed National Recreation Parking Association standards. Equipment purchases, namely a scissor lift to ensure our maintenance staff can safely perform maintenance activities in and around the facilities. Lighting upgrades to district court, government center, and public health to address aging equipment malfunctions and increase energy efficiency. And we want to do some upgrades to the HVAC system to replace aging equipment in mission-critical facilities such as district court and MRVDA. So line items, total personnel costs, is increased by about 8%. Electricity increased 11%. Building maintenance, 12%. Contractual services, 544%. And judicial complex maintenance stayed the same. Water usage stayed the same. Telephone stayed the same. Other operating expenses, 8%. Total operating costs, 9%. And total operations, 8%. Next slide, we show personnel costs of 6%, insecticides 0%, vehicle maintenance 0%, and other operating expenses 0%. This is for our vector control program. Total operations 5% increase. Then our fairgrounds operation personnel costs of 20%, building maintenance 158%. This is to address a lot of the concerns that we found in the facilities out at the fairgrounds. We have a lot of asbestos out there that has to be remediated. It's starting to become friable and a danger to health and occupants. The electricity stayed the same. Construction services not applicable. And other operating expenses stayed the same. Total operating cost of 76%. Total operations at 66%. So with that, I will entertain questions on the facilities and parks plan.
Wonderful. Any questions? Yeah, of course.
Mr. Chairman, I just, a couple, and I may be skipping ahead to some of the closing remarks, Lucio, and Asma, so I'll apologize if I jump ahead and cut into anything. But Mr. I want to say thank you with the effort you're making both on the utilities and the parks and facilities pieces of it, trying to identify a plan on things we can continue to work on to improve. We've seen over the past few years an investment into our facilities, whether that be HVAC, lighting, the making sure our bathrooms are ADA certified, et cetera, and it goes along with our other departments with trying to make sure we have internet, et cetera. But I'm excited because I'm seeing where we're having a plan come in place, and part of that excitement is the strategic plan and how we start working on 3 to 5 years out. Because I think one of the discussions that I had with Lucio and Asma when they kicked off this process was where I'm excited is, you know, we're starting here, like, kind of like what I see as the first stages of the strategic plan implementing, right? We talk on the milestones and the metrics and what are we looking at from every one of the departments that presented today. And so for that, I'm thankful to everybody to really kind of start looking at it, because as maybe our revenues become a little more restricted, we start figuring out a plan. What can we do in year one? What do we do year two? And what do we do in year three? And if it doesn't fit in one of those, how do we find a way to make it fit? But I appreciate the efforts that you're making to really kind of work on both utilities and parks, facilities and parks to really identify, like I said, how we meet a standard, how do we come up with a long-term plan, and how can we start to implement it? So appreciate all your efforts.
Chair Sheldon Hernandez, Commissioner Sanchez. So yes, this is the fundamentals of, I guess, transforming from a reactive approach to a proactive approach when managing our facilities. And that's what I'm trying to establish here. So and I have been working with other departments on their facility needs. So I think I've started to establish a really good rapport with other department heads, and hopefully we can keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Lucio Luttrell, Budget and Research Officer. So I'll go over the last slide, which is our next steps and closing remarks. On April 23rd, so next Tuesday, we will have external agency presentations. This includes the Transit District, Animal Service Center, and MERVDA. And so they'll be presenting what their budget request for this next fiscal year looks like. On May 14th, we have a scheduled work session and/or preliminary approval. Last year, the board approved the preliminary budget on that board meeting. If necessary, we have May 28th for a preliminary budget approval. The budget is due to DFA by June 1st. And with that, are there any final questions or commission input?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner.
Lucio, again, I not to reiterate my last comments, but I really appreciate the efforts that you and Asma did working with all of the departments, and to all the departments that came to prepare for this. I think this year was a lot smoother. You kind of doing year two of this budget work session to be able to kind of dig in and for us to see a little more of the nuts and bolts of what each department has planned, what they're looking for, let us ask questions, become more informed commissioners. And so I just wanted to say kudos to you, Mr. Macias, and you and your staff. Thank you for the support on this. Like I said, it was, I honestly was expecting us to go, a lot longer, but I think the way the process, the way it was presented, everything was just very smoothly. So thank you for all of your all's efforts.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I just might comment that part of the smoothness is that we're projecting and we're able to incorporate larger levels of funding that would be coming in. Not all of the factors that could have an impact on the budget have been calculated out. There could be some discussions with over compensation that could have impacts, and I just want to note that it could have some bearings in terms of where we were able to reach in terms of at least initial funding for the individual departments.
No, absolutely, and I know that there's several things that we're potentially looking at that could still affect this, but I think overall, I know, I said as we go through and we have to adjust, we will, but I think they said I appreciate that clarification.
There is a lot of positiveness, especially when you say yes to almost all of the requests. So again, I just want to note that there could be some adjustments that have to be made over the next several months.
Perfect. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you, Lucio. Thank you, Ozma. Okay, perfect. Okay. Cool. Meeting's adjourned at 12:27.